I end up playing for the entire day until Blaze and I complete all of the beginner missions and therefore the event mission as well at about dinner time, with the two of us only taking a short break for lunch during that. And the man actually ends up being quite helpful during the missions. He seems to have designed his character with a pure offensive magical build, which is different from mine in that while I have magic I also have plenty of investment in physical. Something Tar once again finds amusing, considering how similar it is to my stats and skills in reality. Makes me wonder if Blaze is the same though. If his build in game is the same as how he fights as a guardian in reality, assuming he is a guardian. Which I'm pretty sure he is at this point, considering that he seemed to show more combat training and experience than me when we were fighting in the game. Something a civilian most likely won't have. Either way, I stretch not too long after getting out of the pod dock before heading over to the living room, just to pause as I remember to get dressed. So I turn back around, deactivating my Magitech armor and heading towards my closet where I quickly get dressed and reactivate the armor again. Right as I'm about to leave my suite though, I find my terminal suddenly buzzing at me from my arm. And when I turn it off sleep mode and find it to be an email, I immediately stop walking, my hand hovering over the doorknob as I find who the email is from. White. I frown as I read the email, which is basically just asking if I would like to join her in a private booth during the Class 1 team primaries that start tomorrow. With Arya too, apparently. Is she actually trying to make an effort now? Although, why is Arya gonna be coming too? My frown grows deeper for a moment before I shake my head. Might as well give it a chance. It'll give me time to ask more questions. Plus I can see Arya. I continue leaving my suite while locking it behind me. Now is time for dinner though. Scarlet. Arya shouts as she jumps into my arms, having turned a corner out of nowhere while I'm walking towards White's private booth. We get to watch the tournament together. I can't help but smile at the girl as I continue walking through the hall, briefly nodding to her butler who is panting in exhaustion when I pass by the hallway they had come from. And the man nods at me while panting, making me feel a faint amount of pity for the old man. "Greetings, pant young miss," he says with some difficulty before taking a moment to catch his breath and straightening up again. "Would you mind taking care of the young lady from here?" "Sure," I answer with a chuckle as Arya begins playing with my hair. The butler gives me a bow and a quick thank you and starts walking away at a much slower pace than before. "We're going to see Aunt Amelia?" Arya asks, making me pause to glance at her for a second before I continue walking through the hall again as I answer, "Yeah." Guess Arya has seen White then. Although I shouldn't really be surprised, since the reason she never saw me was apparently that prophecy of theirs. So there wasn't anything stopping her from seeing her niece. I can't help but wonder though. "Have you seen your aunt very often?" I ask the girl in my arms as I slow down my pace a little to give us more time to talk. Arya purses her lips with her left arm wrapped around me and her right playing with my hair still, only to shake her head and say, "Not much." She would come by a few times every year to check on me and bring me gifts, but she never seemed comfortable at our house. And she stopped visiting a couple years ago too. I frown at that before patting the girl on the head and smoothing out her hair, which had become a little messed up at some point. "I have seen her a couple times since then though, but not at home," Arya suddenly adds as she rests her head on my shoulder. Interesting. If I'm reading that right, it sounds like White isn't on good terms with my grandfather on her side of the family, who is apparently the one raising Arya instead of her father. But then again, from what Arya has told me of him, he's not the greatest in terms of parenting or grandparenting material. Since the guy literally charges the 9-year-old girl to stay home with him. Which is why she goes on those commercial shoots and has her job as a child actress. Honestly, not sure if that's even legal, but considering who the man is, I doubt the government can do shit to him. Since he is one of the richest people in the world, even if he's not a guardian himself. Just a man using certain guardian skills to continue extending his lifetime long past when he should have died. Long past when a person using supplements would have died too. He isn't harsh or abusive with her though. He simply treats their relationship as a contract of sorts. One he only accepts because she's family. All in all, my family on my mother's side sounds screwed up in most every way possible. Then again, my family on my father's side is a bunch of demons. So, they're blood Lycans at least, and they love family no matter what. Tar defends my father's side. Well, he still abandoned me. He doesn't say anything in response. Arya stays quiet as we pass by a few people in the hallway. People who immediately end up taking pictures of me and Arya that I am absolutely sure are going to end up on the internet within the minute. We continue, or rather, I continue walking with Arya in my arms for a few more minutes before we finally arrive at a grand-looking staircase, which apparently leads up to the private booths reserved just for the Knights of Humanity. And the place where me and Arya are going to be seeing White. My birth mother. The door to White's booth see a rather grand-looking white and silver door with a screen outside of it see opens without me even finishing approaching the thing to reveal an equally grand-looking room. One fit for royalty. Which I guess in a way the knights are like the rulers of the earth in that they're by far the strongest humans in existence. Especially White, whose door is at the center of the 5 doors. I cautiously walk through the door before it shuts behind me, finding White sitting on a literal throne at the center of the room staring at me and Arya with a conflicted look on her face. Then, to my surprise, she gets up from her throne and says, "Here, have a seat," while motioning towards it and summoning 2 other seats just like it, but smaller. One that she takes, and one on the other side of me that I'm guessing is meant for Arya. But I'm too tense for that right now, as I keep an eye on White, quickly finding the woman surprised by the turn of events. She doesn't let it keep her surprised for long though, as she almost immediately waves her hand, dismissing the other chair. Then we sit in silence for a few minutes. A few very awkward minutes spent watching as the stadium fills up with people, none of their noise reaching us in here. The only occasional sound is that of Arya moving around on my lap, pushing me further into the throne so that she can scoot between my legs and just lie back with her head resting on my chest instead of her previous spot sitting on one of my legs. Something that both Tar and White appear to be amused about. I just roll my eyes before finally focusing my attention solely on White as I ask, "So why did you call me here?" I frown at that. 19 years of never seeing me, and now you're suddenly worrying? I ask, perhaps a bit cruelly. But certainly truthfully. She flinches at that, meanwhile Arya just ignores the byplay between us and actually appears to be going to sleep. Which is adorable, but not important right now. Even if the position she pushed me in feels more than a little uncomfortable. She starts, pauses, then starts again. I've never really been good at putting my thoughts to words, but she pauses again, only to continue when she sees my glare. I know you'll likely never trust me, but I wanted to try. Even if it won't likely happen, I have to at least try. I stare at her for several seconds before turning my gaze to the stadium and wrapping my arms around the girl in my lap, quickly feeling her somehow grab one of my arms in her sleep. You know, I think I'm rather thankful that Arya is here during this conversation. I wonder if White knew how much you 2 got along with each other and had her come as a soothing effect. Tar mutters, sounding genuinely curious. And to be honest, I can't help but wonder that as well. Not that it'd matter. You're right, I eventually state without looking at the woman. I probably won't ever trust you. Nor will I think of you as my real mother. I see her flinch out of the corner of my eye, but I ignore it as I turn to look at her again and finish, "But I'm willing to let you at least try. You did give birth to me after all." A small amount of hope appears in her eyes. Something that honestly irritates me even more, because if she really cared for me this much, then why the hell did she abandon me in the first place? Why would a mother abandon a kid to a hellish life just to sate some prophecy? It's bullshit. Do know that I won't be inconveniencing myself in any way just to give you a chance, nor will I forgive you for what you've done, I reiterate, making her nod her head in understanding. Good. And now that we've gotten that out of the way, I start before pausing to figure out how to ask, only for White to suddenly ask, "You want to know about my etched skills?" My eyes widen in surprise, but I nod, nonetheless. "I thought so," she says with a nod of her own. White then raises her hand, making a white light shine above it. One that gives me a sort of empty feeling when I look into it. This is null magic. It's one of, if not the most powerful magic known, purely because, at the highest rarity skills, it has the ability to completely erase other magics so long as the user has the mana to do it. My eyes widen at that, and I find myself staring intently at the ball of white light. There's actually an etched skill that you should be able to get from me that allows you to do this too, she continues, making my eyes immediately narrow on her. One of my etched skills. She suddenly pauses as she raises a hand and snaps her fingers, making a flash of white surround us, tinting the air around us with white. Sorry, had to deal with some eavesdroppers. I blink at that before remembering we're in a magical reality. Although how she's stopping anyone from snooping is beyond me. Probably some null magic trick. Anyways, one of my etched mythic skills is called Nullify Magic, and it lets me nullify any sort of magical skill as long as I spend 1.5 times the amount of mana that whoever used the skill spent to use it. My mouth drops open from shock. The hell? That's broken. Even Tar seems shocked as he suddenly appears in the air while gaping at White, apparently not having known the skill himself. He doesn't stay shocked for long though, because he quickly appears to realize something and says to me in my head so that White can't hear, "Your null magic field." My eyes widen. Holy shit. Nullify Magic is the mythic version of null magic field, isn't it? White looks slightly proud of herself and happy with my reaction, but my thoughts are suddenly drawn to the side when a fae appears next to her, making Tar immediately lower his head in respect and state, "Greetings, 3rd Prince Sylvanus." "And you, 14th Prince Tarankar?" The floating dolphin. "Yes," Dolphin says in a deep tone of voice. "Wait, 14th? Oh, right." His place amongst the royal line of ascension rose when I ascended classes. "Good on you, little Tanuki." Tar snorts in my head. A loud hissing sound fills the cavern as I stand opposite the 24-meter-long snake, watching as it hatefully glares at me while covered in wounds. Meanwhile, all of my own wounds quickly regenerate, blood regeneration having climbed all the way to level 19 over the past few months I've spent training here. I growl back at the basilisk, flexing my claws a little as the tips of my fingers, which had been scraped raw after my last clash with the serpent scales, finally finish regrowing. The basilisk itself is only level 460, an entire 31 levels beneath me. But it is skills that put a lot of the other demons here to shame, along with an incredibly durable set of scales over its body. Scales strong enough that even my metallicized blood barely cuts through them, and that's only while damaging both my claws and fingers in the process. A rather terrifying defense for something that much lower level than me. It's to be expected though, considering that the basilisks are the strongest demons in the Ashen Mountains hunting grounds belonging to the Kitsune. Unfortunately, there aren't really any Class 4 hunting grounds, with the exception of the Demon King's continent at the center of the world. Or the oceans themselves. The rest are all just for Class 2s and 3s. The basilisk lets out another loud hiss, prompting me to rush forwards while covered in black, red, and blue electricity from crimson overdrive as I drive my spread-out claws straight into the wounded creature's head. My hand drills into its eye now that it's too wounded to cover its head or move fast enough to dodge it, following which I dig my other hand in and begin wrenching its eye apart in 2 directions. Then, as the creature lets out a very loud screeching hiss, I finish ripping its eye in 2 and dig my way straight inside of its head to find its brain. But the thing dies before I can. Level 460 Basilisk defeated. A massive EXP penalty has been extracted for killing a creature 30 or more levels below your level. Damn it, I swear before scowling at its corpse and walking away, finally having learned how to speak from Leonidas while in my beast form about a month ago. I need to find something else to hunt. Something stronger. Scarlet, Tar mutters, but I ignore him as I start to sprint through the tunnels of the cave system, searching with very little success for something close to my own level. Damn it. Where are the highest level Class 3s? Scarlet, Tar says louder as I continue running faster and faster, ignoring all of the weaker demons in the area without even giving them a second glance after identifying them. I have to reach Class 4 before the end of the night, Tar. You know very well why I have to do that. I understand you want to reach Class 4 before you turn 20, but you're not going to find anything high enough in level here to do that, Tar says slowly and carefully, as if I were a time bomb waiting to explode. It might be best to ask your grandfather to take you to the central continent. That has me gritting my teeth, but I do consider his suggestion. I've always hated asking for help with a passion. But this time I might not have a choice. Not if I really want to make that deadline. To reach Class 4 before I turn 20. I continue running through the cave for another 5 minutes, only to finally give up on finding anything close to high enough level to give me the EXP I need. So I ask out loud, Gramps, I need your help. And not even a second later, a swirl of blood appears in front of me, following which Gramps appears in his usual royal-looking black, red, and gold armor with his long black hair streaked with red highlights flowing down behind him as if fluttering on a breeze. He has a warm smile on his face and is holding a head? Holding a severed head. Why are you holding a head? I ask, utterly stunned by that fact for a moment. Apparently he didn't realize he was holding one as he quickly engulfs it in black blood that completely corrodes the head into nothing but a red and black ash that falls to the ground. Then he says, I was dealing with a bratty noble. Nothing you need to worry about. I look at the pile of ashes for a few seconds before deciding that I don't have the time to question it as I meet his eyes and ask, can you bring me somewhere that has Class 4 demons for me to fight? I want to reach Class 4 by the time the sun rises. He blinks at that in surprise, only to frown. That isn't a good sign. Even if you do reach level 500 today, you won't be able to get all of the catalysts needed to reach Class 4 by the time the sun rises, he plainly states, making my eyes go wide in shock at the realization that he's probably right. I can still bring you there if you want, but don't get your hopes up if that's the goal you're shooting for. Please take me, I ask him, sincerely asking someone for help for the first time in my life. Wait, this is the first time? Tar asks, sounding incredulous about that fact. Yes. It is. Every other time I've gotten help, it was never due to me asking for it. It was from someone else giving it to me without me asking, either doing it just to help me of their own accord or doing it as a favor that I would return later on. I've never personally asked someone for help before. Well, Tar mutters, meanwhile Gramps scratches his chin for a moment before shrugging. Alright, he says, picking me up into a princess carry seconds later as my transformation suddenly reverses. Likely his own doing. He then looks down at me with a smile and says, let's go. Everything turns red. After a period of time completely unknown to me, since it felt both like just seconds pass but also as if entire days passed both at the same time, I find myself reappearing on a cliff with some sort of strange red ground beneath us, feeling very disoriented. To the point of stumbling out of Gramps' arms and vomiting on the ground. Gramps just laughs while waving away my words, I would have been surprised if you didn't react like that. I narrow my eyes on the man for a moment, only to act like he didn't just say he expected me to vomit as I look around our new surroundings. The terrain here is very much what I remember seeing when I was flying through the air before over the central continent, but unlike then, I find us on top of a large cliff overlooking a wasteland. One filled with, in simple terms, nothing but chaos. Everywhere I look, all I can find are demons fighting each other. Some intelligent, some not. All of them are Class 3 or Class 4, with the Class IVs closer to the center and the Class 3s at the very edges. The majority of the demons are Class 4 though. And they're of all different kinds. Literally just thousands and thousands of different species all battling it out here. This is the battlefield of blood and ruin, Gramps says in explanation as he steps up to the edge of the cliff, bringing my attention back to the ground beneath us as I hear splashing sounds. And the ground itself is covered in puddles of blood with dead black soil stained in red all over it. It's a place where demons go to either die or grow stronger. He glances at me. The only people who come here are those who are aware that they may very well die in this place, yet come anyways in the search of power. I've never heard of this place before, I tell him honestly as I step up to the edge of the cliff as well. Gramps snorts before looking back out over the battlefield and saying, of course you haven't. All of the information the human world has on Tartarus came from those irritating nights, and there was no way they would ever come anywhere near the central continent. I blink at that, only to realize that he's right. The only reason I wasn't able to track them when they first arrived here was because of those damned purple and black knights hiding their presence from me and my seers, he continues, sounding rather irked by the knights in general. And right before I found a solution to find their locations, they retreated back to Earth. Huh. Was wondering why he let them run around through Tartarus, killing his people. Turns out he didn't. Anyways, I transform back into my beast form, bringing his gaze to me for a moment until he looks out over the battlefield again and says, "My dear pup, please keep in mind that the demons down there are stronger than any of the other demons at the same level than you've faced thus far. They're also perfectly willing to die out there in their hunt for more powerful achievements." His voice grows slightly darker. "So do not let your guard down. And if I see you going after something too powerful, I will not hesitate. I will pull you out of there myself, before erasing the one you try to fight personally in order to clear the slight." While his words do surprise me a little, I'm far too focused on searching the battlefield below for a target to care about his warning. I don't need something that high a level to bring me up an extra 9 levels. Just something maybe about 100 levels above me? Remember that they're class 4, so they'll have the multiplier of 1, Tar warns me. These are also more powerful demon species as well. Ones with higher capabilities in general. I nod my head at that, deciding to lower the bar a bit to 70 levels above me this time. Strictly because I don't need to kill something as high a level above me as I've done before, just for 9 levels. So instead of searching deeper into the battlefields, I look to the outer edges of it for class IVs. And after searching for several minutes, identifying one demon after another, I eventually managed to find a class 4 demon at about level 560. Which will probably give me enough EXP to reach level 500 myself. "He'll do," I mutter, bringing Gramps' attention to where I'm looking. And as soon as he nods, giving me the go-ahead, I immediately burst into action, jumping straight off of the cliff and soaring through the air towards the demon I am targeting. A revenant, which is a type of demon that uses spectral magic. One that lets them go in and out of the physical world and into the ethereal world where ghosts and phantoms live. But a revenant, unlike ghosts and phantoms, can only stay fully on one side of the ethereal barrier, not being able to fully traverse it at will and only when they're outside of combat. With the exception of its ability to partially traverse, making a hand or claw partially ethereal. Which makes it the perfect target for me, as while they are powerful, they're also weak to blood magic. All stuff I learned from my time at the Kitsun's castle. A rather unpleasant time, to say the least. If for no other reason than the Kitsun in general, not to mention their leader. I push that out of my mind as I continue flying through the air, straight towards the demon in question. Time to hunt. Arkaz crosses his arms as he watches his granddaughter soar through the air straight towards a revenant before surprising it with a punch to its face in the middle of its battle with a weaker demon. Which is ironically an Arachne. The Arachne clearly doesn't enjoy the interruption to their fight, and neither does the revenant. But Arkaz just snorts and waves his hand, turning the level 541 Arachne into a bloody mist in the process without even looking at it. Which seems to shock the revenant for a moment only for it to regain its senses and begin fighting his granddaughter with all of its strength. "Let's see what you can do, beloved granddaughter of mine." Arkaz watches as Scarlet fights the demon, considering every move she makes and marking all of the mistakes she makes in his mind to tell her later. Mostly the ones involved in their family's fighting style that she's been learning over the last few months from him while at the Kitsun clan's castle. The fighting style is centered largely around 4 different aspects of the blood lichens. Their regeneration, their senses, their claws, and their tail. Although it took Arkaz a while for him to convince Scarlet to actually use her tail in her beast form, since the girl doesn't like using it for some reason. Which is fine and preferred when she's not in battle but in her beast form, but when she's in battle, Arkaz and her father both believe she should use every advantage she can. And after a while, they managed to convince her of that very thing. even if they focused solely on the Lycan form training without the tail before that. Arkaz rubs his chin slightly as he watches her using the fighting style he himself developed. As she repeatedly moves in closer to the bipedal ghost-like creature whose slightly ethereal skin is glowing with a black light and repeatedly drives the creature to attack her in spots that won't disable her in any way, letting her get a free hit in on the creature over and over again. And with each and every blow the revenant lands on her, the revenant finds its purplish-black blood burning in the process, rising from its skin in the form of steam. No, it's not just its blood burning. The Demon King smiles slightly as he focuses on the revenant's body, watching as some of its blood simply vanishes with each and every blow. That blood nullification skill of hers is just as impressive now as it was when I first saw it. She may very well be able to clear the curse when she grows up. Arkaz would never put all of the responsibility of the entire universe on a child as young as her, but he admits that it's looking optimistic that she'll reach her goal of being able to remove the curses herself. Which has Arkaz feeling a little conflicted. In the end though, he cares more about her happiness than his hatred of humans. All he can do is blame his son and the White Knight for sending her to be raised amongst them as he prepares for her possible ending of the war. He can't just end the war right away since there's always the chance she won't manage to remove the curses, but after seeing that she had a decent chance of doing so, he at least decided to spare the civilians and change his goal from extermination of the humans to occupation of them instead. That way he will be able to kill them all should she fail to achieve her goal, and free them all if she succeeds. If only the humans would just lie down and accept occupation. Arkaz frowns at that thought, understanding just how naive it is. But he still can't help but wish they would do just that, if only to make Scarlet happier. The Demon King continues watching as Scarlet fights the Revenant, slowly taking it over in combat while using a few of the new skills she managed to get over the last few months. Something he's noticed when thinking about her chances of being able to cleanse the curses is how few inherent skills she seems to be getting as she levels. Which means that she'll be getting higher rarity inherent skills with each one. I wonder, could she potentially get a mythic rarity inherent skill at some point when she's class V? The thought lodges itself into his head and he can't get it out. His granddaughter, being the very first being to get a mythic inherent skill. Something not even he got. Judging from the universal notifications, I wouldn't be surprised if she was close to getting a mythic skill soon. Although which one I can't be sure about. He continues to watch her as she fights, using each and every one of her skills to eventually take down the Revenant all on her own. A feat that many people her age would never even dream of doing. Something most her level wouldn't do either. And yet, Arkaz raises a brow at the frown on her face. Was that not enough to get her to level 500? Scarlet looks in his direction before nodding and turning around to attack another demon. Guess it wasn't. Arkaz takes a momentary glance at his inner system clock, before finding there to only be a couple hours left until the day ends. She'll probably still make it. But she won't be able to get the catalysts she needs in time. Those will probably take her at least a couple weeks to gather. And that's not even considering the requirements to be able to ascend in the first place. The Demon King almost sighs in a brief bout of sadness at the thought of seeing her disappointed. Because he knows that she was for some reason rather determined to make this goal of hers. I wonder why. From what he understands, tomorrow isn't a special day in any way at all. Although he very much remembers her birthday that is in a little over a month from now. Wait a second. Arkaz scratches his chin as he furrows his brows in her direction. Does she know when her real birthday is? It ends up taking me killing a second demon, this one being only 20 levels above me and some sort of insect demon that I didn't recognize, before I get the system messages I'm looking for. But instead of making me happy, the requirements to reach class 4 make me grow rather depressed. Level 520 Blood Revenant defeated. A significant EXP bonus is awarded for killing a creature over 20 levels above your level. 1 skill point is awarded for killing a demon. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 500. 4 free points have been awarded to you and your stats have been updated. Congrats, you have leveled up to level up cancelled due to you being at the cap of class 3. Please ascend to class 4. To do so, you must find and absorb 3 Class 3 catalysts and have 1 skill at its max level. You have earned the epic inherent skill, Blood Absorption. I open my status as I stop moving in the middle of the battlefield, only to feel myself teleported back to the cliff. But I ignore Gramps as I focus on my list of skills. Name, Scarlet Art Esker de Arcaren. Species, Human/Blood Lycan Hybrid. Magic, Blood. Age, 19. Level, 500. SP, 67. Stats. Physical, 1446. Mental, 1445. Magical, 1446. Physical/level, 2. Mental/level, 1. Magical/level, 2. Free points, 0. Mana, 2507, 364/2, 507, 364. Free points/level, 4. Active skills. Pain Diffusion. Skill level, 22. Description. Null Magic Field. Skill level, 21. Description. Blood of Ruin. Skill level, 14. Description. Metallicized Blood. Skill level, 16. Description. Blood Empowerment. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood Swarm. Skill level, 6. Description. Beast Form. Skill level, Static. Description. Metallicized Blood Claws. Skill level, 25. Description. Life Drain. Skill level, 25. Description. Partial Shift. Skill level, Static. Description. Blood Pull. Skill level, 20. Description. Blood Chains. Skill level, 18. Description. Blood Diffusion. Skill level, 15. Description. Gradual Corruption Nullification. Skill level, 15. Description. Blood Plague. Skill level, 10. Description. Crimson Overdrive. Skill level, 15. Description. Blood Shadow. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood Retribution. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood Armor. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood Manifestation. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood Sacrifice. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood Boil. Skill level, 10. Description. Blood Bank. Skill level, 10. Description. Passive skills. Blood Regeneration. Skill level, 20. Description. Blood Aura. Skill level, Static. Description. Blood Absorption. Skill level, Static. Description. Sanguine Effect. Skill level, Static. Description. Life Sense. Skill level, 15. Description. Bloodthirst. Skill level, 10. Description. Bloody Thorns. Skill level, 10. Description. Predator V. Skill level, Static. Description. I feel the strength leave my body, making me drop to my knees as I realize I won't be able to make my goal by the end of the night, even if I were able to get the catalysts I need. Since there is no way I'll be able to bring one of my inherent skills to level 30 in a single night, nor do I have any skill points to spend on bringing a purchased skill to level 50. Damn it, I mutter, blankly staring at my status. Hey, it's fine if you don't get to class 4 before turning 20, Tar says, flying next to me and patting my head. But if I don't, then I'll miss out on the achievement that would give. And if I miss out on that, I might not be able to upgrade gradual corruption nullification. If that's all you're worried about, then don't be, Gramps suddenly says, making me lift my head to find him standing there with his arms crossed. You don't turn 20 for another month and several days after all. I blink at him. He stares back at me. Several seconds pass in silence. According to your father and the system logs, you were born on the 30th of the 9th month of the year, he says, breaking the silence after a while. Although the exact date of your birth was probably muddled up somewhere because you were born in an illusion where time was slowed down. But why wouldn't I mutter, only for the answer to come to me as I remember that Alan simply guessed at my birthday instead of knowing the exact date. How did I forget about that? I stared down at the ground for several seconds, before sighing and climbing back to my feet again. Then I nod my head at Gramps and tell him, thanks for the help, Gramps. He smiles brightly at that and, with a nod, says, anytime, sweetheart. And now that that issue is dealt with, would you like to deal with the catalysts? Of course, I answer him with a slight incline of my head while glancing at the battlefield behind him. Then I focus on him again as he snaps his fingers, making a large pile of hearts appear out of nowhere. This time you need 50 Class 4 demon hearts to get a single catalyst, and since you haven't killed all that many Class 4 demons, you only have enough for one catalyst right now, he says, breaking the bad news. But then he snaps his finger again, making a pool of blood appear in the air with some sort of image showing in it of a glowing red, blue, and black crystal underground as he adds, what I suggest is to not waste your time killing 100 Class 4 demons and instead go grab these. They're a powerful Class 4 catalyst, and there should be 2 of them in the same cave system. I blink at that before asking, where is this cave system? Another pool of blood appears, but with some sort of map this time. And within the map, 2 locations are marked. Both with 2 marks at each location. This is a map of the battlefield, Gramps states before pointing at one set of marks, this is where we are, and then moving his finger to the other marks, and this is where the cave is with the crystals. He snaps his fingers once more, making my mind blank out for a brief moment as the pool of blood suddenly rushes at me, only to vanish, following which our exact location somehow becomes etched in my mind. Like I'd stared at a map for who knows how long and memorized it. This should last for about a day or so. I look up at him for a moment before nodding with a smile and saying, thanks. Then I jump off of the cliff again, rushing straight towards the location marked on the map in my head. As I rush through the battlegrounds, ignoring all of the demons in my way, I quickly open the description of my new skill. Blood absorption. This skill passively absorbs common rarity blood magic skills used by other users that come into contact with the user's body, converting the skills into mana for the user instead. The skill almost makes me stumble in my run, but I manage to continue without stumbling despite it. Holy shit, that's a good skill. Although it's static. If I had to guess, it'll probably make it passively absorb uncommon rarity blood magic skills along with the common skills at legendary rarity, and rare rarity blood magic skills at mythic, assuming it ever gets to those rarities, Tar says, sounding rather impressed with the skill himself. Although it's also possible the mythic version could skip rare entirely and go to skills up to epic rarity instead. That would be very nice. Although it's still just one type of magic, even if it's one of the more powerful types of magic. Most class versus barely even use anything that isn't rare or higher in rarity anyways, Tar comments, making the skill a little useless at its current rarity. I am quite happy with all of these epic rarity inherent skills I'm getting though. Blood Aura alone is very helpful since it's a passive skill that always boosts my stats by a tiny amount while decreasing the enemy's stats. Although the amount is smaller than a single percentage of our total stats, so it's not absolutely amazing or anything like that. Your favorite of the skills you got over the last few months is Blood Empowerment, right? Tar comments as I continue sprinting through the battlegrounds while ignoring all of the demons thanks to my crest being on display. The one that lets you burn your life energy in exchange for increasing the effect of one of your skills? Yeah, that one is almost as useful as Crimson Overdrive. Except that it's only epic rarity and not legendary. Plus, I can recover my blood without having to do anything simply through blood regeneration, but I can't do the same with my life energy. Not without pulling it from others through either life drain or sanguine effect. Blood Swarm is kind of a mess skill for me though. It doesn't exactly fit in with my current set of skills. I'm not really much of a summoner, so summoning a bunch of homunculi made out of blood to fight alongside me isn't really my style of fighting. Out of the corner of my eye, I find a class 3 demon for some reason trying to attack me despite my crest being on display, only for me to realize that they are an unintelligent one. So I simply whip my tail out of my body towards them, hardening it the moment it arrives, and cutting them in two with it. Then I pull it back inside, not wanting the thing to be out any longer than I need it to fight. I'm still surprised your grandfather managed to convince you to use it in battle, Tar comments, making me grimace. Well, I'm not going to let the disgusting comments made by those on Earth stop me from using it when it really is useful in combat. Since while the tail doesn't actually help with balance on a blood Lycan, it does help in terms of the range it gives, along with the fact that it's like a hidden weapon. Overall, I'm not gonna act like a natural weapon in my beast form doesn't exist just because of my pride. Tar gasps at that and exclaims, "You finally broke past your pride in something. I'm so proud of you." I quickly try to grasp at the tanuki on my shoulder, only for him to vanish right before my hand reaches him, making me grasp air instead of the fur ball. That's rude. Tar doesn't say anything in response, instead just sending a feeling of smugness across our bond. I roll my eyes at his actions, despite the smile inching its way on my face. Then I fling my tail out to cut another class 3 unintelligent demon in half as I continue charging across the battlegrounds. You seem to be in a better mood now, Tar comments after several minutes of running. Probably because I'm no longer pressed for time and should have plenty of time left to get the achievement now. An entire month just to get these 2 crystals and finish bringing one of my skills up to level 30. Actually, on that note, do you think I should try bringing Life Drain to level 30 or Metallicized Blood Claws? As Tar answers, I kill another 2 unintelligent class 3 demons that try to attack me, either one works. You're generally using both at the same time anyways. You have a point. Guess I'll use both then. I can train them here in the battlefield of blood and ruin as well. After I get the crystals, of course. You know your grandfather isn't just gonna let you grab those crystals without a fight, right? Tar asks, and I nod my head. Of course not. He made me gather all of the catalysts before, so he's gonna make me do it again. It's the blood Lycan way after all. Making the members of the pack fight for their own improvement, even if they're pointed in the right direction in the process. If I had to guess, there's probably a powerful demon or a nest of demons located where the crystals are. But that's only a guess. You're probably right, Tar says, still not appearing in case I decide to swat him or something. Which is likely a good idea. He snorts. I continue charging my way through the battlefield until I finally find myself at the cave that is marked on the map in my head. And the moment I reach it, I hear the sounds of skittering inside of the cave. Yep. Judging by the number of demons I hear inside, this is a nest. Which means it's time to clear out another nest. I sprint inside of the cave entrance. The very first thing I find inside of the cave is a bunch of insects. Large ones spanning a meter in height with 6 legs, 2 compound eyes, and a hard carapace and shell. Basically, giant beetles. With a glowing green liquid dripping from their mouths. Drone number 406, Tricytic Beetle Spawn, level 501. Drone number 405, Tricytic Beetle Spawn, level 501. Drone number 400, Tricytic Beetle Spawn, level 501. Drone number 404, Tricytic Beetle Spawn, level 501. Drone number 415, Tricytic Beetle Spawn, level 501. Well, that's an interesting set of names. It's not nice to judge, Tar comments, but I ignore him as I begin using Life Drain on the creatures. And at the same time, I use Blood Empowerment on Life Drain to increase its effect using the very life energy the Life Drain skill drains from them in the process. Which makes a really nice combination. Maybe I should just focus on leveling life drain to level 30. It might go faster, just because of blood empowerment. Maybe, Tar comments as the beetles begin growing berserk while charging at me and flinging around what I can only assume is poison from their mouths. An assumption that grows increasingly likely when said poison splashes on the stone of the wall's stone that isn't covered in blood like the ground is, and it begins to burn through the walls with ease. Right. So don't let the acid touch me. Got it. Tar snorts in my mind as I rush towards the beetles, but I pause after a second. Wait. Or should I let the acid touch me? It's acid, Tar comments. You're not going to get any gradual corruption nullification training from it when the acid will be gone by the time you nullify it. Oh. True. I continue sprinting towards the beetles before beginning to tear into them with abandon, the creatures being quite weak in comparison to me despite them being a higher class. If only barely. At one point I do end up getting acid on my arm, but it doesn't seep through or even harm my armor very much, so I ignore it. And as I continue fighting, I notice the armor repairing itself not much later from the minimal damage it received. Which is a nice boon. Although that only happens after it drains a tiny bit of blood from my blood storage. It doesn't take long after that to finish off the rest of the beetles, and after I do, I can't help but smile at my armor. Because unlike my old armor, this one actually repairs itself automatically by drawing on my blood storage. Something Leonidas added in later on. So I don't have to waste any time or mana using repair on it, and it's automatic. Not to mention the under armor that lets damage go straight to me when hit directly, instead of damaging the under armor. It's very comforting knowing that even if my armor is destroyed, I at least won't be naked afterwards. I stretch a little before continuing further into the cave. Let's see if we can't find these crystals. It's too bad the map doesn't include their exact location, just the location of where they are above ground, Tar comments, and I can't help but nod. Then again, maybe there will be something interesting to hunt in this cave. It doesn't take long before I find more beetles and immediately begin to battle them. The Void. Tarankar, otherwise named by Scarlet as Tar, watches Scarlet fight the demons through a half-formed portal in the in-between, otherwise known as the Void. But after watching her for several minutes, he purses his artificial body's lips and sighs. Ever since Scarlet had entered his life, he has been conflicted. He loves Scarlet like a best friend since he doesn't actually love most of his siblings, he won't say he loves her like a sister. At the same time though, she reminds him of painful memories. Memories of his previous contractor and how he died after trying to reach too high. Right when he's about to sigh again, a loud ripping sound echoes across the in-between, making him blink in surprise. Then his father appears next to him in his artificial dragon form as he declares, "Son, the prophecy is starting to come to its next arc. Make sure the girl is prepared." Tarankar blinks again at that, only for his father to vanish again. Then Tarankar turns towards where the ripping sound came from, only to find a small, jagged line running across the blackness that is the Void. And out of that jagged line, a single void spawn, a grotesque being made up of insect-like chitin and tentacles, attempts to make its way through, only to fail and get stuck. Then it gets electrified by the rift in the void itself. Oh, that's not good. From Tarankar's lessons as a child, he understands that the void is separated into various areas, with some areas being able to connect naturally to the mortal realm and the far shore, and others not being able to. And for as long as the Fae have existed, the void spawn have all been in the areas of the void not connected to either. But now Tarankar can't help but look on in fright as more void spawn reach the rift from the other side, only to join the first one in death. If Father is right and the next arc of the prophecy is starting soon, then the void creatures will begin to break through the rifts into the other areas of the void, where they will then make their way into the mortal universe. Tarankar watches the rift for several minutes in silence, not paying much attention to Scarlet's battles as he does so. And it isn't until he is absolutely sure that it's only the beginning of the prophecy's arc and that the rift isn't going to grow any larger for a very long time does he return his attention to Scarlet. I hope she can reach class 4 before turning 20, because if she doesn't get that achievement, she'll never be able to upgrade gradual corruption nullification. And if that doesn't happen, the universe and the far shore might be done for. Vixeler rubs the 2 crystals located in her main den with loving affection while muttering, "Don't worry, pretties, I won't let anyone take you from me." The large tricytic beetle stands at 3 meters in height and has a large shell on their back as they stand in a bipedal position, letting their other legs wave about their sides. But after hearing skittering coming in a rush from the entrance to her main den, her head jerks around to look, an expression of pure hatred appearing on it. "Stay out," she shouts, a hoarse tone entering her voice the moment she sees one of her spawn entering the cavern, feeling like the very act of something entering the den threatens her precious crystals and everything else in her collection. The tricytic beetle spawn at the entrance skitters in place for a moment, seemingly unsure of what to do before it just stays outside and relays the information it came to relay to its mother. And immediately, Vixeler's eyes widen in absolute rage as she shouts, "An intruder? Come here to steal from me?" Vixeler lets go of her crystals while rushing to the entrance and grabbing the spawn by the head, her otherwise green eyes taking on a pale white color as she looks through its memories. But the sight she gets is not what she was expecting, and she ends up stumbling backwards, a conflicted look on her face. One of fear, awe, hatred, and greed all wrapped up in one expression. The giant beetle plops down onto the ground, her legs making cracking sounds as they shift back to her monstrous form out of her bipedal one, and she immediately begins skittering around her den back and forth, occasionally rubbing up against some of the items in her collection to calm herself down. The princess. But my treasure, but the princess, but treasure. Conflicting thoughts fill the simple creature's head as she rushes back and forth, but after several laps around her den, the creature's eyes begin to flash with a green light as greed fills them. Then a horrific word echoes in her head, repeating the word mine over and over and over again until she eventually stops at the entrance and screams a scream that would cause humans on Earth to have nightmares. M-I-A-I-N-E-E-E. As soon as her demonic curse of greed takes over her mind, making her collection her absolute priority over any sort of intellectual thought, she rushes out of her den, slaughtering her own spawn for being too close to it in the first place. Then she continues through the nest while mentally giving out a single order to each and every one of her spawn. Kill. Scarlet. With my current set of skills, it doesn't actually take me very long to get through the upper levels of the cave. And all of the demons in the cave aren't much of a problem either. At least, not until I reach the lower levels of it, where I end up finding demons averaging about 30 to 40 levels above me. But even then, the creatures are all unintelligent, so they don't put up too much of a fight. And thanks to my rather vast set of legendary and epic skills, I take care of the things just like the other demons. I'm starting to wonder where the challenge is in this, I mutter to myself, Tar having vanished at some point during my travels. I continue to make my way through the cave for a while until things start to get a little odd. All of the demon beetles here begin acting rather berserk. As if something riled them all up into a frenzy. Guess. Something doesn't like me being here. These things aren't a demon I recognize though, so I don't know what sin they are bound to. And Tar didn't recognize them either when he was here. I still don't recognize them, Tar suddenly comments, appearing again out of nowhere. Welcome back. Thank you, he says with a nod, only to vanish from sight when more beetles begin to appear charging down the tunnels of the cave. I'm guessing you haven't found the crystals yet. Considering how you're still searching the caves. Unfortunately. If I had to guess, they're probably located somewhere closer to the bottom of the nest. Wouldn't be surprised if the evolved demon leading the nest is the one with the crystals. They probably are, Tar agrees as I begin tearing through the beetles with the martial arts Gramps has been teaching me. Something that is made increasingly easier by just how stupid these things seem to be. They're also the perfect level above me for Predator V to work at full capacity without them being any higher than that. I continue tearing the creatures apart until I finish off the last of the bunch, briefly feeling a slight amount of sadness at the thought that all of the life force from this nest won't be given to me. Since you don't get EXP while captain level. A rather annoying aspect of reality. I wish the system made things easier on us. Why couldn't it just let us stockpile the life force, or rather, EXP we take from other creatures when we're level capped and just use it up all at once after ascending? Because a mortal's body isn't capable of holding life force without actually absorbing it, Tar comments, making me frown as I continue walking through the tunnels of the cave. So the excess life force just goes straight to the system itself instead, powering it. Well, that's just annoying. It also makes this feel like a waste of a hunt when I'm not getting anything from these things. Except for training, that is. And from what Gramps has said over the time I've been here, a wasteful hunt is not one blood Lycans should go on. There always should be a goal to a hunt, whether that be to feed the blood Lycan with what they hunted, gathering EXP, training, or finding something. Well, blame the universe, not the system for that, Tar comments, making me pause for a moment. After all, the system isn't what's making you grow stronger or ascend. All it's doing is guiding you. I blink at that. What? This information is generally locked until your Class V, but Father gave the okay to tell you, Tar says as I slowly continue making my way through the cave. Everything you believe the system is doing, it's not the one doing it. Absorbing life force is a natural process in your universe, although the system altered it to only give you the life force of things of a different species from you centuries after it was introduced just to stop people from murdering their own species to grow stronger. If that's the case, are there instances of people growing strong without the system's help? Well, from what I learned in my lessons as a child, Tartarus used to have mages before the system was created, Tar explains. They were far weaker than the system users of today though. Mostly because they had to figure out how to use their magic without any assistance, not to mention figure out what their magic was in the first place and how to absorb life force. Yeah, that makes sense. But if that's the case, then no, the system restricts its users from using their magic outside of their skills. Tar answers my question before I can even ask it. That's never really been an issue though. Some users tend to get a skill that lets them directly manipulate their magic in a way, such as your grandfather's blood domain skill, which lets him do anything with blood as long as it's within the domain. Interesting, does White have a skill like that? No, she doesn't, Tar answers. I think there are only a few domain skills in existence right now. The blood domain for one, then there's the Reaper's death domain, and the Lady of Devouring's domain of devouring. A shiver runs down my spine at the exact magics connected to the other two domains. One made simply from death magic, and the other a magic that lets them literally eat the minds and even the realities of other beings. More beetles round the corner and I quickly begin to fight them as I grunt out loud, but what about ascensions? Tar seems to understand my question as he answers, all the system is doing for ascensions is telling you how to do it. Technically someone without system access can do them as well, but they would have no way to know if they're ready for an ascension, or how to do it themselves. I tear through the 3 beetles without much trouble, before looking up at him and asking, and the reality warps? Specifically the first one? This one I only learned recently, but it's because the system inserts reality energy into your body, giving it a bit of a jumpstart and making you enter Class 1, he explains, making me frown a little. You can consider any regular person Class 0. But entering Class 1 is what gives you access to your magic in the first place. Not the system. That's rather interesting. I wonder why this isn't common knowledge on Earth. From what Father said, it was because everyone who is told about it isn't allowed to talk about it since it might make some humans and demons less willing to form a contract with a Fae, Tar answers. And we Fae kind of need contracts to survive. I can't help but raise an eyebrow at that, but I don't say anything. Because even if it's kind of sneaky and absolutely withholding information from us, it's for his people. So I can't really blame him for it. Not to mention that it sounds like you can't get very far without the system's help anyways. Or at least, nowhere near as far as the system can take you. Certainly something to think about. How things would have developed without the system, that is. Although, that makes me wonder. Why can't the Fae absorb life force on their own? I start walking again through the cave as the Tanuki stays silent. And I can't tell if he isn't sure if he should answer, or if he's asking permission. But I get my answer soon enough as he says, "Father just gave me permission to tell you." To keep things simple, there are 3 types of beings in existence: mortals, spirits, and void creatures. I blink at that but otherwise stay silent, letting him continue. The humans and demons and any other species living in the mortal universe are creatures that live off of biological processes, with their reality being powered by their life force. Meanwhile, spirits, such as us Fae, live solely through life force. And our magic is based on spirit instead of mana, which is a resource that doesn't exist in the mortal realm. But at the same time, life force doesn't exist in the far shore, or any of the other spirit realms either. So while we're gifted with long lifespans, we're also left without any way of getting stronger or extending them without the help of mortals who we contract with. Wait a second, you're talking as if there are other types of spirits, besides the Fae, is that true? Tar appears in front of me with a serious look on his face as he nods. Yes, that is true. But every spirit realm only has a connection to a single planet each, and not every planet has a spirit realm anchored to their own. Including Earth. That has me pausing mid-step. The last of the 3 types of beings, Tar continues, taking my silence as his cue. The creatures of the void. They do not have any life force in them at all and run solely on void energy, both in terms of their nutrients, their lifespan, and their magic. But they generally are only found in certain locked pockets inside of the void that nothing can escape from, so we don't know very much about them beyond that none of the void creatures we have seen have had any sort of intelligence. I stare at him for several seconds without saying anything, only to eventually mutter, "This is a lot to take in." "You don't seem all that surprised by it though," Tar comments, pointing that out to me. "Yeah, probably because I'm getting rather used to having what I accept as normal blown out of proportion by now. First with all of the other secrets kept from the public, then the whole princess thing, and my emotions, my parents and Gramps, not to mention the prophecy. I don't really think there's much that can shake me anymore." "I don't know if I should feel pity for that or not," Tar mutters, and I just shrug before beginning to walk through the tunnel of the cave again, only to hear a loud screech coming from deeper into the cave. Looks like I've finally found the evolved demon in charge here. The screech continues to grow louder and louder as I move closer to it, only for the screeching to turn into what sounds like words. But they're too quiet for me to clearly understand just yet. So I increase the sensitivity of my ears, something I had rather low while in this place since I don't like being underground with my ears, as I continue walking closer and closer until I can hear them rather clearly. "Mine. My yini. Mia tainini." I blink at that. "Well, that's not creepy at all." "It answers what's in the demon has at least," Tar comments, and I almost subconsciously nod my head in response as I mutter, "that it does." Wasn't expecting a greed sin demon here, but at least it makes things simple. Kill the thing, take the crystals. When someone threatens a demon with the greed sin's personal possessions, they tend to lose their minds to their greed if they aren't very evolved demons like the kitsune. Although as I've learned over the last few months, even the kitsune lose control sometimes. Like when one of the noble kitsune demons decided they wanted to possess me themselves and attacked my guards only to be put down like a rabid dog. Rather pitiful, but it did serve as a lesson that made that sort of thing only happen a few other times, besides that one. Anyways, the words continue getting closer and closer until a giant beetle begins rampaging down the tunnel towards me, its eyes flashing an eerie green the moment its eyes lock onto me as it screams, "Stay away from my preciouses." Again. Not creepy at all. Vixeler Tricitic Beetle Level 601. Well, on that note, I sent my blood shadow rushing forwards as we both use Life Drain, Blood Boil, and all of our other ranged skills on it, making the thing begin letting off little waves of blood as it charges through the blood chains, trying and failing to bind it in place. But right when I'm about to start using Blood Empowerment on Life Drain, I realize something and instead use it on Blood Thirst, making a massive amount of power fill me from the over 100 stacks of blood thirst I have built up, all being increased in efficiency at once. My eyes widen at the beautiful rush it gives me as I seriously question why I never considered doing this before, only to throw that thought to the wayside as I make use of this high, and that's really the only way I can describe it, to break the sound barrier and clash directly with the giant beetle's mandibles. And just as I expected, the creature holds strong, but it doesn't manage to push me back either, the boost from Predator V and Bloodthirst being enough to make us a match for each other. Which is certainly saying something, considering how it's an entire class and 100 levels above me. Meing. The creature shouts again, all of the intelligence it may have had not being there anymore in the slightest as its greed fully controls it, making the creature begin to stand up on half of its legs, the back half as the rest of them make creaking noises and shift around to better match arms instead of legs. Then they all swarm towards me, only for my blood shadow to intercept them immediately. But my blood shadow doesn't have the bloodthirst boost that I have, so it only manages to send them off course before getting sent flying in the process. I ignore my blood shadow as it struggles to get up, instead focusing my attention solely on the large beetle whose mandibles are starting to let off a little smoke from the electricity making contact with it from Crimson Overdrive. And I don't hesitate to burn more and more of my blood, activating blood sacrifice on top of Crimson Overdrive, which has me grimacing in extreme discomfort as entire droplets of blood form on my skin from the burnt blood. But the pain part of which I'm diffusing with pain diffusion is worth it, since it gives me the strength I need to lift the beetle partially into the air before slamming it into the ground to stun it. Then I yank my right clawed hand back and send it flying straight towards the creature's head while using metallicized blood to create a blade of blood metal sticking out of my knuckles that I stab straight into the thing's head. The beetle lets out a shrill screech filled with pain as its body convulses all over, knocking me from side to side in the process until I twist my arm once and rip the blade out, making the creature finally stop moving. And as soon as I get the system message telling me that I can't gain EXP while at the level cap and the message about skills leveling, I collapse onto my back while breathing heavily, completely drenched in my own blood as if I were sweating buckets of it. Until I use the clean skill on myself, that is. Despite my pain, despite the fact that I can barely breathe with how little blood I have left right now, me having burnt way too much of it to do that, I can't help but grin up at the ceiling as I lie flat on my back panting hard enough that I'm sure I won't able to say anything for a little while. You pushed yourself a little too far that time, Tar comments, sounding a little annoyed. Any more than that and you might have ended up burning all of the blood in your body and killing yourself. Yeah, sorry about that. I learned my lesson about using Blood of Ruin underground in an enclosed space when I almost drowned myself with my own blood a few weeks ago. So I didn't think there were really any other options to take it down. Plus it did the job rather quickly, wouldn't you say? Tar sighs before lying down next to me as we both wait for blood regeneration to regenerate enough of my blood for me to continue moving again. In the meantime, I just have my blood shadow, that is still alive somehow, watch over us. Just try to be more careful, Tar mutters, but he doesn't sound mad. Just a little worried. Roger that, Captain Tanuki. He snorts. Now if only I could transmute blood with blood pull, then this blood loss wouldn't be an issue. Instead, I have to wait. Arcas frowns as he watches Scarlet through a blood mirror, unsure of if he should praise her for winning or scold her for almost killing herself to do it. He almost stepped in himself if it wasn't for his noticing her slowing down the amount of blood she burned at the end to keep herself alive. She knows what she's doing. He continues watching her for several seconds in the cave. But if she ends up killing herself by accident, I'll be grounding her from hunting for a month after bringing her back to life. Arcas really hates using blood resurrection, because the skill costs him all of his mana and stops him from regenerating mana for an entire week. But there's no way he would let his granddaughter die, much less to a freak accident where she ended up overusing a skill, killing herself. The Demon King shakes his head before using blood transcendence and switching places with a droplet of his blood he has inside of the witch's abode in the Mesa of Illusions. And the moment he appears fully in front of the head witch, he notices her eyes widening in shock. But she doesn't let out another sound, unlike the other witches in the area who all let out fearful yelps before bending the knee to him. He scoffs on the inside as he glares at the head witch, still wondering if only slaughtering 10 of them was holding back too much after he found out about the prophecies, much less the witch's act of locking his only son in an illusion for 5 years with a knight and causing them to get together. But he calms himself down again at the thought of how if that hadn't happened, his beloved granddaughter never would have been born. So his glare lessens a little as he asks, "Have you an answer yet?" The head which immediately answers without any hesitation, still clearly afraid he will finish off the rest of the clan should she displease him, "Yes, your majesty. Our divination has informed us that Her Highness will be going back to Earth soon." Arkez's eyes widen in shock at that, the man never having expected her to have any chance of making it back on her own until she reached Class V, giving him at least another few years to be with her before she goes back. Not to mention a few years for the war to progress until she enters the fray. But how? The man blinks as an answer comes to him, then he immediately vanishes from his spot, leaving a drop of blood there so he can reform his body at the witch's abode whenever he pleases as he appears in the middle of the caverns of death, inside the Reaper's own bedroom where he finds him sitting on a chair reading a book. And all the man does when he notices the Demon King is nod his way and continue reading without getting up from his seat. "Answer me this, Lucius," Arkez states with a frown on his face, "are you planning on helping my granddaughter?" Lucius just remains silent, but after several seconds, he nods his head. And that's all Arkez needs. "Looks like Scarlet will be going to Earth sooner than I expected." The Demon King can't help but feel saddened by that news, but despite that he just sighs and tells the Reaper, "Do as you please," before vanishing again to reform his body where he left a drop of his blood in the battlefield, soon finding Scarlet to have recovered enough to sit up against the wall while he was busy. But not enough to start moving around. Arkez watches her for several minutes, not doing anything other than that, until he eventually lets out a sigh. If she can escape from her bodyguards, she can handle herself on her own. It was the same thing I did with Leonidas, and I'm not going to break what's become tradition now. Even if she's getting help to escape. Out of the corner of his eye, Arkez notices a Kitsune noble beginning to approach the cave system Scarlet is in. So his eyes narrow and he instantly appears in front of them, moving far faster than even the speed of light in the process and scaring them into jumping straight into the air and landing on all fours with their 6 tails sticking straight into the air. But he ignores that to reach down and grab them by the neck, raising them into the air as he asks, "What do you think you're doing?" Arkez can tell that the Kitsune is lost to their greed. That they're hunting his granddaughter to keep for themselves. But Arkez dislikes killing his own nobles for losing themselves to their curse, so he gives the noble a chance. The Kitsune scratches at his hand without managing to even ruffle his clothes, despite the noble's level of 1607, clearly not capable of clear thought right now. So Arkez slowly begins to constrict his hand while being careful not to pop the Kitsune's head clean off in the process. And slowly, ever so slowly, clarity begins to return to the Kitsune's eyes as it's being suffocated. After he deems the Kitsune coherent enough to speak, he releases the pressure on its throat, dropping it to the ground as he asks again, "What do you think you are doing?" The woman, a prodigy from a younger generation of the Kitsune if Arkez remembers, correctly coughs out loud a bit before she kneels down and exclaims, "Please forgive me, your majesty. I have committed a terrible sin." Arkez watches for a few moments as the woman repeatedly bows her head over and over again towards him until he eventually snaps his fingers, making her vanish in a swirl of blood before she ends up deposited several dozen meters above the Kitsune's castle halfway across the world, where she falls with a yelp down through the air. Then he reappears on the cliff he was originally on and continues watching over Scarlet, ignoring his duties as the Demon King and leaving them to his son to handle for the moment. Serves him right for sending Scarlet to Earth. The rest of the cave isn't very difficult to deal with after killing the evolved demon in it, as all of the remaining beetles grow frenzied and uncooperative with each other. So I end up finding the crystal just a couple more hours of searching after managing to regain my mobility. Then I bring it straight to Gramps, who compresses the things into orbs that I absorb along with the hearts. Which just leaves me with one final requirement for reaching Class 4. For this requirement, you're not allowed to hunt unless you're doing it solely to level this skill, Gramps warns me, reminding me of how much blood Lycans despise wasting a hunt. But then his face freezes for a moment, only for him to get a creepy grin the next that has shivers running down my spine. "Actually, I just thought of a perfect way for you to level Life Drain to level 30 in a short period of time." Oh, please don't be something I'm going to hate. 2 hours later. I glare at Gramps from my throne next to him as I continue using life drain on him and blood empowerment on life drain with the life energy the other skill is taking from Gramps. All while he ignores the skills, using himself as a way to level the skills. Because apparently skills level faster when used on higher level beings, and the system only stops you from getting credit for the skill if you have no intention of killing the person you're using the skill on. So to train life drain on him, all I had to do was convince myself I was gonna kill him with life drain as I started using it, and it worked. Even though my skill isn't doing anything to him at all, as the man continues talking war talk with the various dukes and demon lords scattered around the long table beneath us from where we're sitting on the raised dais. As of yesterday, we managed to claim the eastern half of the Earth's eastern continent, gaining a major foothold on the world, Random Duke A declares as I continue life draining the Demon King. Although I keep an ear on their conversation since it will probably be helpful to have insider information like this when I go back to Earth. Which does kind of make me wonder why Gramps is letting me listen in like this. Does he really care more about me than his own war effort? Because I kind of find it a little hard to believe that a man who has spent thousands of years hating humans would suddenly prioritize his granddaughter who he has known for not even half a year over that hatred. But then again, I guess he was already doing that when he ordered the demons not to kill civilians. It is a little disheartening to know that the world has lost all of the continent that used to be called Asia though. Because that was a massive continent, even if it wasn't a major one in terms of the Republic. Since most of the Republic's biggest cities are stationed in what was called America in the Old World. The Western continents. And the civilians? Gramps asks, glancing at me in the process, something I can see out of the corner of my eye as I focus on the other demons. While still life draining him, of course. As you requested, Your Majesty, the human civilians have all been corralled into their cities under guard. Random Duke B answers Gramps' question with a bow of his head. There were no civilian casualties during the offensive thanks to the Earthen Republic's desire to keep them out of the fighting along with our own. However, a large majority of the human civilians from the territories we've conquered were evacuated to other human territories on Earth. As expected, Gramps mutters while rubbing his chin. Then Random Duchess C chimes in, at this rate, the humans will never be able to retake the continent. Not now that we have dozens of gates opening up of classes I through 3 all around the continent. Gramps nods at that, and I can't help but grimace a little. That's not good. Random Duke D nods his head as he says something in affirmation of Random Duchess C, but my attention is brought to the Tanuki as he asks in my mind, why are you calling them that? They have names, you know. Yeah, but I've never been good at remembering names. And remembering the names of hundreds of dukes, only a few dozen of which could attend, is not something I plan on doing in my lifetime. But you could just identify them, Tar mutters. True. And I'll do that if I ever speak to them. Too much trouble to do that when I'm just thinking about them in my head though. Tar stops talking, and I can't help but notice Gramps' lips quirking up ever so slightly. Actually, come to think of it, why exactly aren't the demons questioning Gramps' sudden decision to ban the demons from killing the civilians? Because they have absolute trust in him, Tar answers rather plainly. The demons evolved rather uniquely compared to the human. I guess you could say the Demon King is like a god from Old World Earth to them. They borderline worship him since he was the one who raised them up from nothing, taught a lot of demons how to control their instincts back in the early days, created the nation they have, the power they have, and is by far the strongest amongst them. Strong enough to be known as the strongest being in the universe, and not just out of Earth and Tartarus either. He's the strongest being in the universe at large, including the other planets as well. The closest mortal to ever reach Class 6. Oh. So it's blind trust then. They don't bother to question it because there's nothing to question in their eyes. He's never wrong to them. And if he is, then he's strong enough to become right despite that. Is that what you're saying? It is, Tar answers, making me purse my lips a little, only to be distracted by a system message. Skill Life Drain has leveled up to level 26. Oh. Nice. My attention is reclaimed by the Demon King as he continues talking, although what they're talking about right now is mostly logistics and their numbers. Not what's actually happening right now on Earth. So it's less interesting, since I'm absolutely sure I won't remember most of this after this meeting. Doesn't change the fact that I'm gonna listen though. Because I might just remember some of it. My face lights up with a smile the moment I finally get the system message I've been looking for after an entire week of constantly life-draining gramps. A week that I ended up spending more time with any other single person than any other time in my entire life. Skill life drain has leveled up to level 30. It is now at the max level for the skill. You leveled a skill to the max level and therefore meet the third of the 3 qualifications for breaking through to class 4, have 1 skill at its max level. You have completed all the requirements to reach class 4. Would you like to ascend? Not right now, I whisper out loud before glancing at Gramps, who pauses in his lecture at the sound of my voice. Then an incredibly wide and proud smile stretches across his face as he asks, "You did it?" I nod my head, a proud smile of my own on my face. And it's about time too. Over the last week, all I've been doing is going through lessons with Gramps along with some of his strategy meetings for the war and other politics for Tartarus in general. Most of which has been rather boring. At the start, I was a little interested in hearing how the war was going. But after he started teaching me history lessons on the world, along with sociology lessons on the different demon species and history on the royal family, my family, I started caring less and less. And when he had me come to the political gatherings, including another 2 balls during this period that I was thankfully allowed to wear my armor to instead of a stuffy dress, I was starting to lose it. Especially since I was life draining him the entire time and he never showed an ounce of care towards that. In hindsight, I can't help but feel that he was keeping me by him this whole time more so that he could interact and spend time with me than he was to train my skill. Which makes me wonder if he knows I'll be leaving Tartarus soon. Something that I guess is entirely possible if he bothered the witches. Speaking of the witches, I'm a little surprised I haven't run into any yet. Even if the witch species of demon is rather reclusive. Let's put this lesson on indefinite hold then, Gramps says while standing up from the chair across the little table from me in the outer gardens of the Demon King's castle. I'm sure you'll want to get to your ascension as soon as possible, knowing you. Now that has me smiling even wider before I stand up from my chair, give him a light salute, and begin heading towards the doors leading inside of the castle. But after only making it 3 steps away from the table, I feel someone pulling me into his chest in a hug. And it doesn't take me long to realize it's Gramps. Just the very fact that it doesn't make my skin crawl with discomfort is enough to tell me that. Please come back and visit, he whispers with his chin on top of my head while holding my head to his chest, making my eyes widen slightly as I understand that he does, in fact, know I'll be leaving after all. Then he steps back while moving his hands to my shoulders and grins, and try not to kill too many of my forces when you join the war. I roll my eyes at that but smile regardless. Also, your authority as the princess of the nation is still beneath that of a demon lord during the war effort, so the demons won't listen to you even if you reveal your crest, he continues, confirming what I had already suspected. And if you do find a class 4 demon who is trying to kill you but is too strong for you to take on, simply show them your crest and they wouldn't dare so much as touch a single hair on your head. Or anyone you consider dear who is around you at the time for that matter. His face takes on a slightly disgusted look. Including that human family you have on Earth. I smirk at that. Something I learned over the past week was that Gramps feels very conflicted about the Sylvesters, since he knows that I consider them family and that they basically raised me in a slightly roundabout way, even if I was still treated as an orphan at the start. So he doesn't hate them, and he even seems to feel some respect for them because of it. But he still dislikes them. Whether that's out of jealousy or because they're humans, I'm not sure. He absolutely hates White and everything about her though. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if she wasn't my biological mother and Leonidas's wife, he'd kill her the exact instant she steps foot on Tartarus again. On the other hand, when I told him about Arya, I think he actually seemed to be happy for some reason. Which was rather interesting. Until the topic got to blue and he was pissed again. If you want, We could have a last dinner tonight after my ascension, I suggest, surprising both Gramps and Tar considering the emotions he sends my way. And after some brief hesitation, I add, and Leonidas can come too. Which seems to shock the two of them even more than my original suggestion did. Despite my being on Tartarus for several months now, I've never actually shared a meal with them. Balls not included, since while I am eating there are just way too many people roaming about, and it's not at a table or any sort of dinner setting. Actually, most of the time during the balls I was preoccupied with trying my absolute best at avoiding everyone so as to not get asked to dance. Since not only would that be torture, but I don't know how to dance, and it would be embarrassing. Don't plan on learning how to either. I would love that, Gramps says with an actual tear in his eye. I smile and nod at him before heading on my way, not even pausing as I tell the maid waiting for me at the entrance of the outer garden, prepare the bath. I'm going to ascend to Class 4. The maid looks overjoyed at that and immediately sets about doing so. Well, time to torture myself again via ascension. I smile up at the ceiling as I enjoy the water in the bath for several minutes before eventually taking a deep breath. You have completed all the requirements to reach Class 4. Would you like to ascend? Yes, I would, I state out loud in response to the system, my voice echoing through the bath chamber after I let out a breath. Confirmation received. Ascension to Class 4 will now begin. Several seconds pass in silence before I feel the extreme pain from the past ascensions return. But this time is different. I can tell almost immediately that it is. Instead of the absolute burning pain across my body, this one feels more like that of a paper cut. But all over. A simple, sharp, stabbing pain everywhere that has me instantly screaming out loud. And I already know why it's so different. It's because this ascension is directly changing my reality itself. My soul, as humans used to call it in Old World Earth. But I don't do anything. I just stay stiffly underwater. Because I know better than to scratch myself at this time. All that'll do is end up tearing apart my skin and further extending the process of the ascension to repair that damage. The stabbing pain and discomfort continues for who knows how long as I scream my voice hoarse, only to vanish out of nowhere. Then I hear cracking sounds along with the feeling of severe discomfort and some minor pain all over my body, causing me to look down just to find my bones shifting back and forth between my beast form and my lycanth form on their own with no usage of the skill. Which surprises me a little. Not to mention the fact that judging by its appearance, it should hurt quite a bit. But it's just uncomfortable with only some pain instead. Strange. The discomfort grows more when I feel my face elongating into that of the muzzle I have in my beast form, only to turn back. Then to do it again and turn back again. Please make this stop. As if responding to my thoughts, everything stops. And I briefly wonder if the system actually listened to me, or rather the universe, since ascension isn't actually the system's doing. Only for a flash of pain to echo throughout my body as the shifting suddenly starts again, but this time joined with my size growing larger. And larger. And larger, only stopping when I reach about 3 meters in height, at which point I feel my entire form shifting along with it. Then everything just resets, and I end up back in my lycanth form while panting heavily, unable to move as my head rests on the edge of the bath, some of the water having overflowed thanks to my increase in size. That was weird. It looks like you're probably going to get a major upgrade to your beast form skill this time, Tar comments. And yeah, the Class 4 Ascension focuses more on the reality than your physical body. So the pain is more spiritual in form than physical, with a lot more discomfort than the others rather than actual pain. A lot of discomfort. I really hope I don't have to go through anything like that again. You will for your eventual ascension to Class V, Tar says, crushing my hopes rather brutally. Class 4 just partially merges your reality and your body. Class V fully merges them, so it's a lot worse than Class IV's ascension. I'm starting to wish you kept that to yourself. Well, at least I'm not passing out from exhaustion this time. There wasn't as much pain after all, and the type of pain felt less exhausting somehow. So I let my system messages flow. Ascension complete. User is now class 4. Congrats, you have leveled up to level 501. 5 free points have been awarded to you, and your stats have been updated. Congrats, on account of ascending to class 4, your stat multipliers have been increased. Your species has changed from 75% blood Lycan, 25% human, to 87.5% blood Lycan, 12.5% human. 100 skill points are awarded for ascending to class 4. Spend them wisely. 150 skill points are awarded for ascending to class 4 within a year of being initialized into the system. Spend them wisely. 150 skill points are awarded for ascending to class 4 while less than 20 years old. Spend them wisely. Rare Rarity Inherent Skill, Metallicized Blood Claws may now evolve into the Epic Rarity Inherent Skill, Metallicized Blood Claws while retaining any previous effects it may have had at the cost of losing 3 levels. Rare Rarity Inherent Skill Partial Shift will now evolve into the Epic Rarity Inherent Skill Partial Shift while retaining any previous effects. There is no cost in levels due to the skill being static. Rare Rarity Inherent Skill Beast Form will now evolve into the Epic Rarity Inherent Skill Beast Transformation while retaining any previous effects. There is no cost in levels due to the skill being static. Rare Rarity Inherent Skill Life Drain may now evolve into the Epic Rarity Inherent Skill Life Absorption while retaining any previous effects. There is no cost in levels due to the skill's level being maxed out. You have earned the Legendary Rarity Inherent Skill, Blood Nullification. Rejoice as you have earned one of a significant few full multi-element skills in the world. That's a lot of skill points, and the new legendary skill is looking very nice. Although don't I already have a multi-element skill? Bloody Thorns? I'm guessing it's not counting that one for some reason, Tar comments, making me nod my head in agreement. Then something I knew was going to happen happens. Warning! This is a universal notification. Redacted has obtained an etched skill slot through reaching class 4 under the age of 20 years old. May their achievement ring out throughout the known universe. And another one follows right after it, making me wonder if I'm the only one with 4 etched skill slots without a single mythic skill. Warning! This is a universal notification. Redacted has obtained an etched skill slot through reaching class 4 within a single year of initiating into the system. May their achievement ring out throughout the known universe. Yeah, that was kind of to be expected. I only barely made that mark though, for the within a year thing. Since I'm pretty sure it'll have been a year since I was initiated within a few days. But then again, the days between Tartarus and Earth are confusing to line up. Something I learned during my lessons with Gramps over the last week. And it's a good thing I ascended before going to Earth, because I wouldn't be surprised if the redaction on my name is cleared when I head back since the redaction on my full name was taken away when I went to Tartarus in the first place. Although there isn't a notification about Predator's upgrade getting any progress, meaning reaching class 4 wasn't one of the requirements. But it apparently was a requirement for a different possible mythic skill, considering the notification that replaces the universal one. System Notice. User has completed 5 out of 7 of the necessary achievements in order to obtain a title-bearing, redacted, skill. The achievements they have completed include the following. Reach class 4 while under 20 years old. Defeat a being 150 levels above you without any assistance. Reach class 4 within a year of having been initiated into the system. By being the descendant of the Demon King who is the original etcher of the skill blood domain or having obtained an inferior version of the skill yourself. By having both blood magic and null magic or being descendant from a user with them that has etched their skills. Complete the final 2 achievements in order to attain the title-bearing, redacted, skill. Or not a mythic skill? Huh? Tar, are there any skills with a rarity? I trail off at that thought as I notice Tar just staring at the notification, clearly not registering anything I'm saying. Even after the notification disappears. Tar? He doesn't respond. I snap my fingers in front of his face, splashing some water on him as I do so, reminding me that I'm still in the bath. But I don't feel like getting out, so I stay in. The water's automatically cleaned by the magic in the bath anyways, so there's no reason to leave the comfort of the water right now. The tanuki snaps out of it after getting hit by water, making him look at me as he asks, "What does redacted rarity mean? Why are you asking me?" I ask out loud in return, my voice echoing in the bath, making me switch to our internal communication again for the silence of the bath chamber. "Shouldn't you be the one with all of the information about the system? I've never heard of a rarity above mythic, so don't ask me." Tar exclaims while shaking his paws in front of him, only for the tanuki to glance at the wet fur on his side as if he hadn't noticed getting wet. He raises his gaze to me again a second later, seemingly deciding not to care about the wet fur while he says, "I should go inform father about this. You enjoy the rest of your bath." I blink in surprise at that, only for the tanuki to vanish. And when I reach out for our bond, I find him no longer on Tartarus or in the void. Wow. I just got ditched. I cross my arms in irritation at that, only to sigh and focus on the new skill upgrades and the new skill that I got. Although first I focus on the skill upgrades, bringing up their descriptions, and finding them to be rather pleasant. Overall, beast transformation changed to allow me to transform into a second form. One that isn't bipedal. Which is kind of all it's saying, but I think I get the gist, just from what happened during the ascension. Meanwhile, metallicized blood claws and partial shift now has no limit on what parts of my body I can shapeshift or use the claws on, and how many parts one can use it on at once. But life absorption, that one is an entirely different skill now. A real evolution. Life absorption creates an aura around the user that automatically drains the life energy of any nearby creatures that the user designates as targets into themselves. Costs mana to use. Life energy drained can be manipulated by the user to heal themselves all over or at specific locations, flow into other skills, heal others, or pushed out of their body again to leave in the open. Wow. That's good. Now I don't have to keep an eye on each demon when using the skill anymore. I can just activate life absorption and it'll drain everything I consider an enemy around me. A very useful upgrade. But blood nullification. Blood nullification allows the user to nullify any blood in a set radius around them for a significant price of mana dependent on the distance between the user and the blood, the obstructions between the user and the blood, and any reality that the blood may be attached to. That's good. That's very good. Then again, it's legendary. Of course it's good. As for the strange skill that may be a rarity above mythic, if I had to guess, one of the last two requirements is probably to get the blood domain skill myself. But that would also mean that the skill is upgrading a mythic skill. I frown as a thought comes to me. Blood domain lets the user have absolute control over blood in the domain, and it even lets it manifest blood that isn't fully set in reality like the manifested blood I have in my blood weapons. But it doesn't let them actually erase blood that is already in the world. Only blood they manifested personally. Maybe the upgrade will give me absolute control over both the creation, destruction, and manipulation of blood? Since blood domain only has absolute control over creation and manipulation of it? That would be cool. Either way, time to relax and enjoy the rest of my bath while I wait for the furball to get back. I go ever so slightly deeper into the water with a sigh while resting my head comfortably on one of the relaxing, cushion-like edges of the bath. Then I close my eyes, simply feeling the magical water soaking into me. These baths are amazing. I'll miss them when I go back to Earth. My eyes shoot open at that thought. Right. I should absolutely ask for a mobile one from Gramps before I leave. Inside of Alan's office at the Silver Association. Alan's head falls down and hits his desk the moment he sees the two universal notifications that appear in his vision. Meanwhile, White, who was heading the massive group call he is currently in along with all of the other important people in terms of the war's progress, pauses for just a moment, letting silence fill the call. She's caught up to me in class in just 11.5 months. What am I doing with my life anymore? Can I even protect her now? I wouldn't be surprised if she's catching up with me in strength by now, if not soon. The silence in the call continues for several more seconds before almost everyone begins talking at once, making no one able to hear anyone. Not until White forcibly mutes everyone except herself and says, "Be quiet." Then Black suddenly unmutes himself and says, "Congratulations." Alan's eyes widen in shock at the absolute stupidity of what he just did. At least, until he realizes that it was probably on purpose. Shit. While everyone is muted right now, Alan knows that they're all thinking the same thing. That the redacted, who everyone on Earth has been searching for, was actually White's daughter. Something they know simply because of Black's one word, since she was in the middle of speaking in the call with her clearly visible in the video, meaning it wasn't her and therefore only leaving one person it could be meant for. "Scarlet, when you come back, you're going to be under a lot of pressure by the press. I hope you're ready for it." Alan grimaces as he thinks about how Belle might be taking this news, since she was already worried about how far Scarlet was leaving her behind. And if Scarlet is already Class 4, while Belle only recently reached Class 3 herself, Alan knows she'll see her own progress as subpar in comparison. Although this might help morale amongst the Guardians, knowing a 19-year-old is already at Class 4. Since she's meeting the expectations of that silly title they gave her of the apex predator of the human world. Then Alan remembers that she's a demon. Probably mostly demon by now. That's a future problem to deal with. For now. Alan looks around, furiously searching for a bottle of wine only to fail to find any. "I need a drink." To Scarlet's ascension to Class 4 and her two-edged skill slot achievements. Gramps says while raising his glass to the air from his place at the end of the long table with me and Leonidas on either side of him. May she find victory wherever she goes, and be given luck for her hunts forevermore. Leonidas and I follow suit, deciding that since this is gonna be my last meal in Tartarus, at least for now, I might as well have a drink myself. Especially since the alcohol in this shouldn't affect me. After taking a sip of the wine, I turn my attention to Leonidas as he says, "So what are your plans from here on out? Are you going to the battlefield? Or moving to a different clan's hunting grounds?" That has me stiffening up ever so slightly before I glance at Gramps with a look on my face. Why didn't he tell Leonidas about my leaving Tartarus? It kind of makes this farewell dinner awkward if one of the people in the dinner doesn't even realize it's a farewell dinner. Gramps just averts his gaze while calling over a maid to bring him more food. Coward, I mouth towards him the moment he looks my way, but all he does is grin widely at that and begin eating his food, alternating his gaze between me and Leonidas now. He's not the Demon King, he's a damn chicken. I awkwardly turn to face Leonidas, who has clearly noticed something's up considering how he's sending suspicious glances between me and Gramps, likely at our silent interaction. And as I'm trying to figure out what to say, his eyes go wide and they lock on Gramps as he slowly asks, "She's not?" Gramps just nods without pausing in his food devouring, the man seeming to enjoy his meal. Then Leonidas turns to look at me again with a look of sorrow on his face. Wait, what? Did he really just guess it from our brief interaction? How? Leonidas eventually asks me, only to shake his head with a sigh and mutter, "Never mind." I watch him as the man raises his head to look up at the ceiling for a few seconds before he brings his gaze back down with even more sorrow in his eyes. "Just please stay safe, okay?" The pure emotion in his tone puts me off guard for a moment as I blink in surprise, only to dumbly nod my head in response, making the man smile. Then he glances at Gramps as if trying to be sneaky before looking at me and making a very quick blood domain between us while covering his mouth and saying, "And tell Amelia I said hello and that she should visit." I heard that, Gramps growls from the front of the table, seemingly startling Leonidas. Although I'm not surprised. It's Gramps' skill that he just used to do that. After all, I wouldn't be surprised if he had some way to counter it. I smile a little at the humor that, ignoring the dark look Gramps is giving his food as I mouth back at Leonidas drawing his gaze to me again, "All right." He smiles, and I turn back to Gramps to ask him, "Hey Gramps, what's the blood immortal title of yours for?" Gramps turns his focus away from his food to look at me with a smile as he puts his fork down and answers, "It's from a rather special and unique title-bearing mythic skill that I got just a couple centuries ago, not long after the demonic assaults began. The skill itself is called Blood Transcendence, and it makes it so that I can transform my entire body into blood. I frown a little at that, not really understanding why that's a mythic skill. Mostly because the Bloody Valkyrie has a skill just like it that is only legendary in rarity. Then he smirks and adds, and as long as so much as a single drop of my blood remains, I cannot die. My eyes widen in shock. I'll always be able to reform myself no matter what with no penalty at all anywhere I have blood, even if it's only a single drop of it. Holy shit. He really is immortal then. The only way someone can really kill Father is if they wipe out all of the blood he has scattered around the entire planet and kill him before he can scatter any more blood, Leonidas continues for Gramps, voicing a rather scary fact. Although that was assuming someone could even kill him in the first place. Right. And that's probably impossible unless it's the Class 6 threat from the void foretold in the prophecy. Come to think of it, that Class 6 threat, I wonder if it'll even appear near Earth or Tartarus when it does appear. It's entirely possible it could appear somewhere else in the universe when it appears. Which wouldn't be a bad thing for us since it would take time to get here. Considering how Gramps is easily able to destroy entire worlds on his own from what I can tell, a Class 6 could probably eat them whole or something. Which is kind of terrifying to think about. Wait, I wonder. Did you etch that skill? I casually ask Gramps, making him let out a short laugh as he answers, of course. Makes sense. But that also means that I could potentially become immortal myself that way. A very nice sounding skill to get. On that note, I turn to Leonidas, then Gramps, before eventually saying, thank you both for all the help you've given me over the past few months. I wouldn't have been able to level this fast if it weren't for you. Both of them look surprised at my sudden declaration, but not as surprised as Leonidas is when I meet his eyes and tell him, Leonidas, I don't know if I'll ever truly consider you my father, but I will at least say this. I smile. You're at least on your way in the right direction. Actual tears of happiness begin to form in his eyes, making me chuckle a little before I take another sip of the wine. This stuff actually tastes kind of good. Still not a fan of alcohol though. I share one surprised hug with Gramps and Leonidas before leaving the dinner hall about an hour later and heading towards my room. But about halfway there, I take a deep breath and then whisper as quietly as I can, Lucius. Now's the time. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice some of my bodyguards growing confused at my words, only for everything to suddenly grow pitch black with flickers of purple energy. Then I find myself appearing in the middle of some bedroom in front of the Reaper who simply asks me, not even raising his gaze from his book that he's holding in a single hand to his face, where do you want to go? Can you place me directly next to a gate so that I can enter straight away? I ask, looking around his room a little and finding it rather dark. I can, but you would have to navigate your way through Demon Isle or the Arctic and past all of the demons and the front lines of the war, the Reaper answers, bringing my gaze back to him to find him still with his nose buried in his book, which looks to be a small black book made from leather. It would be better for you to pass through a fracture. I'll send a zombie with you that you can dispose of on the other side after it helps you through the fracture. I purse my lips for a moment, briefly considering just how random the fractures are in terms of where they end up. Then I decide that this is the best option and nod my head, following which the Reaper just snaps his fingers, making me appear right next to a fracture's rift in a very cold area alongside a rather large zombie that quickly picks me up and pulls me through it, ignoring all of the other zombies and revenants passing into the fracture alongside us. Not to mention the noble that I suddenly see appearing nearby with a shocked and frightened look on their face. But they're too late, and before I know it, I'm back on Earth again, in the middle of what looks like a park. Although I have no idea what city it's in. Just that the park is a lot smaller than the ones I'm used to in the Tier 1 capital city of the Republic, and that it seems to be lacking in some technological departments, appearing more along the lines of old-world technology with no magi-tech outside of the barrier around the park. A park. Nice. I knew I wasn't going to have to worry about security cameras seeing me appear out of nowhere, since everyone would just assume it was White's doing or that she gave me some sort of magi-tech item with a skill of hers imbued in it to do it. But this park doesn't seem to have any cameras at all in it, which makes things simpler. Won't have to lie if there's no one seeing me appear out of nowhere to lie to. On that note, I quickly activate my metallicized blood claws while partially shifting my arms and legs from my elbows and knees down before tearing into all of the zombies that appear around me. Since I'm here, might as well help deal with this class 4 fracture. Something that I'm kind of surprised ended up in a tier 2 city in the first place. Or at least, I'm assuming it's tier 2, considering the lack of magi tech. Then again, tier 2 cities still have plenty of people in them. So I guess it shouldn't be that big a surprise. Anyways, I end up having to focus on going towards the people to save them instead, since the demons grow too strong too fast. And I start the little trip off by heading to the closest group of people who are screaming rather loudly in response to some undead. Thanks to my speed, it only takes me a few seconds to appear there and throw my fist directly into the face of a class 4 zombie revenant. Then I quickly take to identifying the other zombies in the area. Demon spawn subspecies, zombie level 508. Demon spawn subspecies, revenant level 525. Demon spawn subspecies, zombie level 516. Demon spawn subspecies, zombie level 507. Demon spawn subspecies, revenant level 549. Back to the old identification system. Since they're undead, they don't exactly have much if any blood for me to manipulate, and as I learned from my lessons on Tartarus, while they do have life energy, theirs is different in nature from humans and is permanently stuck to their body. Which is part of what makes them undead. So I can't drain their life energy either. Which leads me to simply punching them to pieces. A rather simple task, considering that they're only a little bit above my level. If Alan heard you say that a demon 48 levels above you was only a little above your level, I'm pretty sure he'd pop a blood vessel, Tar comments, but I ignore him. Although I am curious why he's been so quiet since the dinner. I was discussing things with Father about the redacted rarity skill again. But nothing important has come up yet about it. Right. That. Yeah, I'm just gonna consider it some sort of super skill that's above the mythic rarity, that's so rare it's never been seen before. Probably because it requires more than one magic to get the skill, like the skill in question apparently needs with both blood and null magic. I wouldn't be surprised if you're right about that, Tar mutters as I continue killing the zombies and revenants, none of them really being much of a match for me. I glance at the humans behind me to find them all staring at me in shock and recognition. But I turn my attention back to the demons again right after that glance, finishing them all off by tearing them apart. Literally. After I do that though, my nose twitches slightly. These demons stink. I look at the dead and shredded in the case of some of them, quite literally, as there is one torn in half demons one last time before turning back to the humans, only to get a camera flash shining in my eyes. But to my surprise, it doesn't blind me. Probably something to do with my advancement to class 4. It's the Scarlet Wolf. She's back and she's in our city. Scarlet Wolf, can I have your autograph? Please look here. A bunch of the humans begin shouting, seemingly forgetting where we are. So I let out a sigh before saying, stop. And to my surprise, they all immediately shut up. Not that I'm complaining. Follow me to find a bunker. Not like I can do much else aside from hunt the demons in a class 4 fracture. But in hindsight, it'll make for a good hunting ground. After dropping the people off at a bunker while politely declining the people asking for an autograph or a handshake, and the one who asked for a hug for some reason, I make my way to the next group of people. Then I save them, go through the same process of them recognizing me, and guide them to that very same bunker. And I repeat this process one more time before I run out of people to save. Which was surprisingly fast. Or at least, it was until I remembered the law the Demon King passed about killing civilians. Which is probably only being violated a little right now, because these are undead, some of whom were probably made after the order was given by Gramps. Guess I should mention that to him the next time I see him. Whenever that will be. That he should repeat his order to the undead after new ones are made. Still. As I run through the fracture, I barely find any infected humans at all. And most of the humans seem to be safe in the bunkers. Which means the order is still helping a lot, even in an undead-run fracture. Anyways, I turn my focus purely on the demons in the fracture, dealing with the weaker ones until backup can arrive. And I immediately feel that this fracture is rather awkward in comparison to the ones I had been in before going to Tartarus. Mostly because they're not trying to kill the civilians. And they absolutely could, even inside the bunkers. After all, Class 4 demons can destroy the bunker shields if they really try. But they're not. They're just wandering around the park aimlessly, as if waiting for guardians to appear and attack. Which definitely supports the intel I got while sitting in on the strategy meetings. That the demons really don't care much about the fractures right now, simply using them to lower the number of guardians on Earth now. Then again, what works, works. The humans can't exactly ignore the fractures that appear since they'd turn into gates if they did. So they have to send people to fight in them. The order by the Demon King just makes it so that they aren't as rushed anymore and don't have to worry anywhere near as much about saving lives rather than just killing the demons. It's certainly an interesting change of pace, Tar mutters from his place lounging on my shoulder. That it is. Somewhere on the outskirts of the Tier 2 city. Marcus Anderson, otherwise known as the Dimensional Drifter, appears in the middle of a street in the city called Argos. And the first thing he does is open up a rift in space to pass through it again, making him reappear in the middle of a park. These Class 4 fractures that been appearing lately are getting annoying. Ever since a few months ago, Class 4 fractures have been getting more and more common on Earth, and since Marcus is one of the few Class V guardians with a spatial magic allowing teleportation, he is often the one sent to deal with them. But right as he's about to step through another rift towards the core of the Class 4 fracture, he pauses. What the is someone else in here? Marcus frowns as he closes his eyes and locks his senses on a powerful mana source blazing with absolute purity coming from the other side of the park. But before he can open a rift to check on who it is doing the fighting, he feels a buzzing coming from his terminal, making him raise it to his face while opening his eyes. What is it? He asks the moment a woman's face appears on the terminal. A face familiar to most guardians working on the front lines as Sage, the second in command of the Silver Association and a large player in the war. An unexpected Class 4 guardian has already saved all of the people in the fracture and has been hunting the demons in it for a couple hours now, Sage states, her voice still as cold as Marcus remembers from their last talk. Marcus frowns at the other association's foresight and intelligence expert before asking, who is it? And do they need assistance? Negative, the woman answers right away. They appear to be a newly ascended Class 4, but there is no need to assist them. The Dimensional Drifter's eyes widen in shock at that, and he almost immediately teleports over there to help, only to stiffen up when Sage finishes. The Guardian is known as the Scarlet Wolf. She's out of her training? Was White waiting for her to reach Class 4 before she released her? I already know from the meeting not too long ago that the girl is behind those universal notifications, even if White wouldn't admit why she redacted her name at the time beyond a simple privacy answer. A few seconds pass in silence before he shakes his head. No use worrying about that monster of a girl. I need to stop this fracture. The man hangs up the call with Sage with a simple, understood, and steps through the rift to the center of the fracture. Then I can meet the famous wolf girl after I finish up here. I notice it right away when I hear the sound of ripping echo from the other side of the fracture, so I momentarily pause in my killing of the demons to glance towards the noise. And just moments later, I hear a conversation including a very familiar voice. Sage? That's a surprise. This is nowhere near the capital city, so why is she here? I don't get much time to consider it since the conversation between the two doesn't last very long before the man whose voice I don't recognize steps through what I'm assuming is some sort of rift in space and instantly appears at the core. Oh, well that's annoying. Obviously wasn't gonna be able to destroy the core myself considering that it's guarded by a level 1000 demon, but I did want to keep killing the lower level demons here for a while. I quickly rush to kill as many demons as I possibly can before the Guardian who I'm assuming is a Class V Guardian destroys the core, only to barely manage to kill another half a dozen in time, the red tint in the air fading not even an entire minute after he appears at the core. Damn it, there goes my training area. This is a fracture, not a training area, Tar comments, but I ignore him. I quickly sprint out of the park as quickly as I can to avoid running into any fans, but only moments after I step out onto the street, a rift in space appears in front of me. Then a man walks out of the rift. One I vaguely recognize, but not enough to know what his name or title is. He looks me up and down for a moment in surprise, likely due to my new armor, only to focus on my face again with a look of respect on his own. Scarlet Wolf, it's a pleasure to meet you, he says with a nod of his head, and I quickly return it while examining him. The man has purple eyes with hair spanning about a few inches in length tipped a little in a deep purple color, and he's wearing a black and purple trench coat for some reason. One glowing with purple particles of energy. Congratulations on reaching Class 4. I blink at that, slightly surprised that he isn't surprised at my class, but answer with another nod of my head as I respond, thank you. We share an awkward moment of silence before I ask, is there anything you need? Otherwise I'ma go now. He looks surprised by that as he blinks and says, oh, Sage wants to know if you need help getting anywhere. Now that has my attention. That I do, I tell him with a nod of my head. A terminal would be nice to have as well, but I can't really tell him that. Not when everyone on Earth believes I've been training with White on Earth this whole time. So me not having a terminal and needing to ask for one would sound rather suspicious. Best to bug Alan with that. Or Amelia. Probably Amelia. I'd bugged Alan enough over the years. In fact, I should probably give him a break. He's probably enjoyed the past nearly half a year or so I spent on Tartarus with a lot less stress now that I'm gone. Maybe it's helped with the stress that had been building up in him ever since I contracted? I should leave him to his peace after saying hi. Belle on the other hand is probably gonna try glomping me when I see her next. And the others from our team might not be very happy that I vanished for so long without a word to them. Not very happy might be an understatement in Emily's case, Tar comments, making me grimace a little. Emily might just be a tad clingy ever since I saved her life. Which makes things a little awkward. Also, I still don't know who this guy in front of me is. Other than the fact that he's able to contact Sage when he wants. Like right now. Yes, she would like help, he says into his terminal call. One that he opened as I was lost in thought. Then that's your next assignment, Amelia's voice suddenly says from the other side of the call, making my eyes widen ever so slightly in surprise. And he clearly wasn't expecting it either, considering the way his mouth parts open ever so slightly. After a few seconds pass, he closes his mouth and answers, understood, Lady White. Then the call drops out. An awkward silence ensues. Again. This guy is clearly not much of a talker. Where would you like to go, Scarlet Wolf? The man whose name I still don't know asks after who knows how long passes. I purse my lips at the thought before tapping my chin a few times and eventually answering, wherever Alan is. The awkward silence comes back. By Alan, do you mean Cypher? The unknown man asks with a slight frown on his face, and I nod. Cypher is in the council currently in charge of the logistics back in the capital. I'll take you to the Silver Association base. I blink at that in surprise, only to realize that it would only make sense for the Republic to be under martial law right now. The only reason why Guardians would form the councils for the war, taking over the power of the government. Although I'm kind of surprised the government let that happen. Wait a second. My eyes go wide as I remember the over 100 Class 3 and 4 changelings that were killed during the Class V fracture. Not to mention Frederica's actions, which either got her killed or exposed her identity. Meaning that the government might not be as strong as it was before. Especially if Alan managed to tell people that there were changelings in it. A very interesting development. Either way, the man in front of me begins to raise one of his arms, but as he's doing that I can't help but ask, by the way, who are you? And out of all of the things that happened since I met him, this one is the thing that surprises him the most. After some more awkward silence, the Guardian eventually introduces himself as the dimensional shifter before practically shoving me figuratively through the portal. Which kind of makes me think they don't like me for some reason. No idea why. Not my fault, I don't know the names and appearances of every Class V guardian in the world. Anyways, I end up in Alan's office after passing through the rift. But Alan's not here, so I look around for a moment in the familiar room that I've been to who knows how many times. Probably less than I'm remembering. Then I head to the door of the office and walk out into the hall before walking through the base to find someone. And the first person I find is Sage as she walks down one of the halls of the base directly towards the office, meeting me partway. "Welcome back, young miss," the woman says with a light bow of her head, seemingly a lot more respectful to me now that I'm the same class as her than she was before. "Alan will be here soon, so please make use of your suite until then." I nod my head back in respect before catching something she throws at me, soon finding it to be a terminal that I quickly attach to my forearm. "Have a nice day, and congratulations on your many achievements during your training," she says with one more nod before beginning to walk away without another word. Blunt and to the point as ever, I suppose. I continue walking down the hall in the direction of my suite, occasionally nodding my head to some shocked people who don't seem to have expected to see me here. With good reason, considering that I've been missing from the public on Earth for months now. When I reach my suite, I find it in perfect condition. The exact same as when I left it. Which kind of makes me wonder if it'll be the same for my suite at the university. Also, the next semester began, so I wonder how they dealt with that. Mostly the whole ranking tournament thing. Did I lose my rank, or was I seeded for a rank? "You should probably remember that you're class 4, Tar points out, making me blink for a moment. Right. I'm the only class 4 student attending the university. Of course I'll be ranked number 1. Guess my stuff at the university is safe then. Not that I really had anything there that I cared about, otherwise I would have asked Amelia if she could have brought it to me at some point. Just like how I had her send a message to Belle, Alan, and Cynthia while I was on Tartarus. The only personal item that I have any attachment towards is my jacket. Everything else is just a bunch of objects with no real value to me. And my credits are stored in my bank accounts, not physically anywhere. So those can't go missing. Anyways, I continue walking through my suite, just making sure no one else is there before I jump onto my bed and lie back while finally opening my skills store to see if there are any new legendary skills for me. And to my surprise, there aren't. Huh. Odd. Was kind of expecting to unlock a new legendary skill for the 2 etched skill slot achievements I got for reaching class 4 so soon. Well, generally those types of achievements are only an additional requirement and not the main requirements for skills, Tar comments, making me frown a little. After all, what sorts of skills could you get simply because you reached class 4 at a really young age? Not many. The only one that reaching a class at an early age really matters for seems to be Predator, which makes some sense when you think about it. Yeah, kind of disappointing though. "It'll open up new paths for you at least," Tar says, seemingly trying to comfort me. "After you get the required achievements for the skills, that is." I nod my head at that with a sigh. Yeah, you're right on that front. Although I guess this isn't all bad. Not at all. After all, I can finally spend the entirety of my skill points on leveling skills. And I have 506 skill points to spend right now. I sit in place staring at my status for several minutes, just doing math in my head until I eventually mutter, "Screw it," and start calculating it in my terminal instead. Because legendary skills are expensive to level up with skill points. Overall, it takes me almost 10 minutes of chugging calculations until I figure out what I want to level up. Since the skill I use the most is Crimson Overdrive, I spend 185 skill points to bring it straight from level 15 to level 20. Then I focus on one of my skills with the most potential and the best for my fighting style and bring that skill, Bloody Thorns, from level 10 to level 15 with 135 skill points. Lastly, I turn my attention to the skill that will eventually rid the demons of their curses, bringing Gradual Corruption Nullification from level 15 to level 20 with another 185 skill points. which all totals up to 505 skill points spent out of my 506 total skill points. A rather costly set of upgrades, but certainly worth it. I hope. To prove that it was worth it, I quickly focus on the skill's new descriptions, finding 2 of them to have changed. Gradual corruption nullification now only needs 3 minutes to remove any corruption from myself, whereas Crimson Overdrive lets me burn blood that doesn't belong to me as well instead of just my own. Meaning I can now use the blood in my blood bank skill for it. A very nice benefit. And Bloody Thorns didn't change at all, so I'm kind of just hoping that it raised the base amount of damage that the skill deals to the enemy in blood nullification. All that aside, I'd say the spending spree was worth it. Now then. I get up from bed and begin heading in the direction of the training room. While I wait for Alan, I'll just train a bit. And so, in conclusion, we need to send more. The Class B support guardian pauses when a screeching sound comes from one of the chairs around the large table as Alan shoots to his feet with his eyes wide in shock and glued to his terminal. The guardian then narrows her eyes ever so slightly at him and says, "Cypher, if you've got important intel, please share it with the group." Alan immediately looks up from the terminal, having been too shocked by the message he had gotten from Sage to even consider his current location. But even now that he's considering it, he still wants to simply ignore her and rush out the door. He doesn't though. Instead, he displays extreme patience as he says, "The Scarlet Wolf is back in action." Then he begins running out of the room while all of the Class 4 and V Guardians in it express their shock at the news, with several of them looking rather interested in meeting her. But by the time most of them recover enough to ask questions, the man is already running down the hallway towards the entrance of the building. She's home. Finally. Alan rushes straight out of the building before waving his hand as he runs, creating a hoverboard made solely out of nanomachines that he jumps on and begins flying through the air towards his base. From there, it only takes him a few minutes to reach the base, following which he startles each of his association's members that he passes by, only for some of them to show happy and knowing expressions. As if they know exactly what it is that has him so excited. But Alan doesn't care about any of that. He just keeps running through his base until he reaches Scarlet's old suite and pauses outside of the door, panting a little from the exertion that it took to get there so quickly. Then he hesitates for several seconds outside of the door, briefly reaching for the knob only to pull his hand back again. Reach for it, pull it back again. Right when he's about to repeat the process once more, the hall around him begins frosting over and his wife appears next to him, practically pushing him out of the way as she opens the door and rushes into her suite. Shit. Alan quickly follows after her without a second thought before finding a surprised Scarlet being held in his wife's arms. Then he pulls both of them into his arms, lifting the 2 of them up into the air himself as she exclaims, "You're back, Scarlet." It ends up taking me nearly 10 minutes to get the 2 overprotective parents to stop smothering me. And just minutes later, Belle rushes in and does a repeat of her parents' actions. "Belle, please let her talk, I'm sure there's a lot she wants to say," Cynthia says, being the hypocrite that she is as she completely ignores the fact that she literally just did the same thing she's warning her daughter not to do. I raise a brow at her for a moment, only to shake my head lightly after Belle draws back a little. Then we all settle down on my bed as I begin to describe to them everything that had happened on Tartarus, after a white field is placed around us of course. Starting with how I was pulled there and ending with the different clans and the hunting grounds I used to grow stronger. My explanation takes quite a while and by the time I'm done, the family in front of me, each of whom had been patiently listening the entire time without interrupting even once, looks like their minds have been blown by all of the information I've given them. So while I let them digest it all, I turn my attention to Amelia, who had finally shown herself about 5 or so minutes into my explanation. After I mentioned hearing Leonidas say that he missed her once. Something I mentioned mostly to get her out of hiding, since I could tell she was here just by the prickling sensation on the back of my neck, even if she was still erasing my sense of sight of her with her sense nullification skill. Something that doesn't really work on a 6th sense of sorts. Unless it's just a plain sense mana. From my understanding, I'm able to tell when people are looking at me purely through instinct. It was getting annoying. Not to mention that she covered us with something to block eavesdroppers, not that anyone would be able to eavesdrop in the middle of my suite inside of the Silver Association's main base. Well, not anyone but knights, that is. Like White. Anyways, Amelia has been dazed ever since she heard that, and especially thanks to my descriptions of the Demon King since I met the guy. Probably because the guy almost killed her once. Maybe twice. Not sure why Amelia thought it was a good idea to go back to Tartarus a few times over the years since she had me. It was all but asking for him to grab her the moment she did. I frown at that, only to lightly shake my head. Never mind. She doesn't know all of Gramps' skills, so she didn't know just how good his senses were. Actually, most of humanity doesn't know just how powerful he is, despite everyone recognizing that he's the strongest being in the universe. A rather scary thought, to be honest. Oh, right. One more thing to tell them. After the Demon King learned about the prophecy and my gradual corruption nullification skill, he gave an order to all of the demons to no longer target civilians and only target the guardians. I tell them with a smile on my face, honestly proud of making that happen even if it was entirely due to the Demon King's will and not my own. None of them seem surprised by this. I blink at that. Why aren't they surprised by this? It's not exactly hard to figure out that you're the one responsible for your grandfather's sudden change in attitude, Tar comments. Especially when it happened soon after you went to Tartarus in the first place. Oh. Yeah, I guess that's true. I scratch my head a little. Yeah, this is awkward now, but I think I at least broke them out of their stupor. It wasn't very hard to figure that out, Alan says with a faint smile on his face. Then Cynthia chimes in, pretty much everyone that knows who you are also knows it was you who's behind the change. Yeah, very awkward. Anyways, I drawl a little bit as I change the subject. What all has happened here on Earth since my impromptu vacation to hell? Amelia's lips quirk slightly at my name for what was essentially me being kidnapped to the demon world before she answers. Quite a few things have happened since you were here. To start off, Black managed to expose Frederica as a changeling to the world after he threw you in his attempt to save you. So the people have lost significant trust in their government, and even Black and Purple both withdrew their support of it. My eyes widen a little in shock at that. After that, the government started losing its power little by little until it no longer has more power than the associations themselves, Amelia continues with a rather pleased gleam in her eyes. They can't really do much anymore to force anyone to do anything, and to top it off, the rest of the changelings were sniffed out after Cypher's father figured out how to detect these higher-class changelings that were previously undetectable. I glance at Alan at that, finding him with a smile on his face as he nods in confirmation. Then I look back to my biological mother again, who currently has a rather smug look on her face. And I find out why rather quickly. The top associations began to take charge of the Republic and the war effort in their entirety after the government nearly collapsed entirely thanks to the cleansing, and the first thing I had them do was significantly improve the treatment of the orphans, Amelia explains, making me smile a little at that. It turned out that the changelings equated to every last council member and government official who was severely opposing the Orphans' Rights Acts that kept being rejected. So the opposition pretty much vanished from the rest of the government. The woman's lip quirks up a little. Not that they'd have the power anymore to stop us even if they did oppose it. That's good. That's very good. I flop back, letting my head hit the pillow with a smile on my face. No more poor treatment of orphans. The Republic's been cleansed, but we still have a war to fight, Cynthia says with a stern look on her face in the corner of my eye. And with this new information about the Demon King, I really don't think we can do much of anything to win it beyond stalling their progression until Scarlet can upgrade that skill and remove those curses. Everyone nods at that, and I do so as well, despite lying down flat on my back on the bed. Can't forget the war. The cleansing of the Republic's leadership was only one major step in the direction we need to go. It isn't the end by any means. I sigh at that thought before rising to a sitting position again and turning to Amelia to ask, where do you think I'll be able to hunt the most on the front lines? Amelia smiles at that and answers, the Eastern continent. Her smile fades a little. You won't be able to fight as well in the Arctic since the demons there are all mostly undead, unlike the demons in the eastern continent. The demons on the eastern continent are also stronger since they've been here on Earth for longer than the ones in the Arctic, Alan chimes in while rubbing his chin a little. Then the eastern continent is where I'll go, I declare with a nod of my head, making Belle only look briefly worried before she calms down. Which is rather surprising, considering how protective she can be sometimes. I'll be going with you, Belle says, surprising me a little. But before I can say anything in response to her, she continues, don't try to stop me. I'm already assigned to go by the Logistics Council. I purse my lips for a moment before sighing again and saying, all right. Just be safe, okay? She looks surprised by my answer as she dumbly responds, why yeah of course. You too. I raise a brow at that and chuckle, only to notice that the others seem a little surprised as well. Wonder why? Tar appears in the air and goes down to my lap as he says out loud, Scarlet matured a bit during her time in Tartarus, so don't be so surprised. I blink at that, simply staring down at the tanuki in my lap, while everyone else does the same. Matured? Belle asks before glancing at me and looking me up and down, making me frown at her. Not in that way, Tar comments, sounding slightly exasperated at Belle, who only shrugs a little at his words. I'd say that she's become more comfortable with people in general, with no little help from the kitsune. I shiver at the mention of those demons. Terrifying creatures, the kitsune. Far scarier than the demons I've been hunting for a long time now. Especially the Rydens. They're just straight up terrifying. Also, the others look skeptical. Why do they look skeptical? Actually, what do you mean by saying that I've matured? Tar turns to look at me as he answers my question out loud, you didn't even react when they all hugged you and you explained everything clearly to them instead of glossing over the details of what happened on Tartarus. That's not something you would have done before. I stare at him for a second before looking at the others and finding them slowly beginning to agree with the tanuki. Huh. Was I really that bad? Yes, Tar answers in my head this time. You were. Oh. That's oh. Well, anyways, would you mind bringing me to the front lines? I ask Amelia, only for her to get a rather terrifying smile on her face. And she's not the only one, as it's mirrored on both Cynthia and Belle's faces. Meanwhile, Alan starts quietly making his way out of the room. I have a bad feeling about this. I let out a sigh after getting to the front lines, feeling more than a little exhausted by the shopping spree I was just put through. Which was apparently required because I grew a little over the last half a year. And apparently my old clothes don't fit me anymore. Which I highly doubt, but I go along with them anyways just because it's nice to see them again before I go straight to the front lines. Plus they were worried about me, so I decided to go ahead and humor them a little. Be honest, Tar says from his place on my shoulder, you just became numb to it because of those kitsune doing it to you so much, didn't you? I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyways, I look around the base camp I find myself in after Amelia's rather interesting method of travel. Some sort of skill that nullified the boundary between space itself, between where we were before and where we are now. A rather interesting way to make a portal or teleport. The base camp is full of guardians without a single non-guardian here, and it makes for a rather interesting sight. There are also quite a few buildings set up with power lines going through the base, some larger buildings where a lot of people are moving in and out, and a large black and white wall made out of neon blue barriers going around everything. All with a single gate down a straight line path between the buildings on the other end of the base. I glance at Amelia to find her motioning towards me with a faintly glowing white light shining around her. And when I look down at hand, I find that same light shining around me. Which would certainly explain why no one is looking at us right now. Speaking of, I activate my armor as we walk through the street towards a building at the back of the base. One that I'm guessing is probably the main building of the base. The strategic center or something. Amelia completely ignores everyone as we walk, but I can't help but look around out of curiosity. From what I've been told, the front lines has moved from the far eastern coast of the eastern continent all the way to about the center of it, bordering the place that used to be called Europe. And everyone is wearing their armor, which would look odd to a random passerby, considering the heavy snow falling down around us. At least, odd until they realize they're all at the very least, class 3 in terms of power. We continue walking through the base until we enter the main building to find more people in it. But once again, Amelia just ignores them all and continues walking until we reach a fancy-looking door closer to the back of the building. Then she opens the door and continues in, surprising the man inside, who I quickly find to be a man I recognize from the news. White, the leader of the Golden Retreat, says, the man having golden hair and glowing golden eyes, just like the name of his association would suggest, as he stands up from his seat behind the desk. You're back. I glance at Amelia to find that she hasn't actually stopped cloaking us. Meaning this man saw through her nullification of her senses. Of course, it's possible that she's not hiding us from him. But I don't get that feeling from the way he's looking at us. Not to mention that I've recently noticed a very faint white line shining from Amelia towards anyone that she is nullification the senses of thanks to my life sense skill. And there's a line going towards him. Although I wouldn't be surprised if I can only see this, because she's letting me. It could also be because you have some minor null magic yourself, Tar says, stating another likely possibility. Yeah. I'm here to register my daughter with the Guardian Assault Forces, White says while undoing her sense nullification skill, making the white energy vanish from around the two of us. The man glances between me and her for a moment before sitting back down as he says, very well. I know you want it done quickly, so hand me your Guardian identification number and I'll hurry this up. I blink in surprise at how polite the man is, simply because I was expecting him to be a little rude. After all, according to the internet, the man created the Golden Retreat Association just to spite the woman he cheated on. The bloody Valkyrie. Then again, it's not really a good idea to judge someone by their public persona. Or by what the public thinks or says about them. I reach into my pocket to grab my ID before handing it to the Golden Rider, and he accepts it before beginning to type away at the computer in front of him. Then just half a minute later, he looks up at me and says, Scarlet Esker, as a member of the Assault Forces, you will be required to kill a certain number of demons during your time serving. Unlike the Defense Forces or the main forces, you won't be required to serve under a leader or follow orders. You will be able to roam through the front lines with absolute freedom as long as you're contributing to the war for the humans. He looks at the computer screen again as he finishes, but I doubt I'll have to give you any warnings over maintaining your contributions. He types something into the computer again before handing back my GID and placing a blank white paper in front of a camera next to the computer. The camera then projects an image onto the letter-sized page, printing out what looks like some sort of paper of identification. Probably something I need to have permission to move through the front lines. The Golden Rider looks up at me again while handing me the paper before nodding his head slightly and saying, Good luck with your hunt, Scarlet Wolf. I nod back as I grab the paper, then we begin to leave the room, and the Class B Guardian, while shutting the door behind us. Amelia leads me out of the base entirely and into the snowy mountains around it before we stop, and she turns to me while saying, as a member of the Assault Force, you can go wherever you want and fight as many demons as you want. I figured this would be the most desirable position for you. You don't have to fight on the main battlefields, don't have to listen to the orders of the higher-ups or the councils unless an emergency is happening, and most importantly, you can fight away from other humans. My eyes widen slightly at that, only for a grin to make its way onto my face. The front lines expand for basically the entire span of the continent from one edge of the water to the other, and any points in the continent on the demon's side are free reign for battles as well. So there should be plenty of places where demons are passing through the continent towards the front lines from the gates that I can fight without having to worry about humans seeing me. Although it isn't a guarantee that I won't be seen, so I should still be careful. But with my hearing, I don't think there should be a problem. Not unless I have some sort of Class B stealth guardian stalking me. And if that was happening, then I'm pretty sure I'd have more trouble than them finding out what I am. Keep your identification papers on you as they absorb a minuscule fraction of the life force let off by the demons when they're killed before the system can get it in order to keep track of the total number of kills you make, Amelia says as I flex my claws slightly, already having shapeshifted my right arm just from the thrill of the hunt running through me right now. You're going to be fighting far more demons than is required, so I wouldn't bother paying attention to the number it shows on the paper. Just don't attack any demons that are too strong for you, and you'll be fine. She hesitates for a moment before adding, and if you do end up facing off against a demon that's too powerful for you to take on and you can't escape, just make sure to show them your crest. I nod my head at that. But then I purse my lips for a moment and ask, how many noble demons are on Earth right now anyways? Amelia frowns for a moment before her eyes flash white and she answers, there are currently about 348 noble demons on Earth, along with nearly 20,000 Class 4 demons. But the Class 3 and below demons number in the hundreds of millions. Doesn't sound to be too far off what I was expecting. The strategic meetings that I attended never mentioned the exact numbers, but they did make plans revolving around an estimated number of demons. A number that is constantly growing as more demons pass through the gates and fractures into Earth. Do you know the levels of those noble demons? I ask out of curiosity. Overall, the noble demons don't concern me until I can actually deal with them. After all, noble demons should all recognize my face, so they won't attack me. Even if I go slaughtering their forces. From what Gramps said to me, they'll only either try to capture me before letting me go after whatever plan they're carrying out, or they'll leave me alone, canceling whatever plans they have. Mostly will just depend on the noble demon in charge of the horde of demons and how important whatever plan they're carrying out is. This intel isn't confirmed, but there should be 2 dukes, 16 marchionesses and marquises, 60 counts and countesses, 101 viscounts and viscountesses, and 169 barons and baronesses, Amelia answers, making me grimace a little at the mention of the significant number of marchionesses and marquises. I already knew about the 2 dukes, those being Satan and Damien, but I didn't know about there being that many marchionesses and marquises. More are coming through the gates and fractures as we speak, so the number isn't completely accurate, Amelia continues, sounding rather annoyed by that. But you shouldn't have to worry about them. Just go do what you want, and if you do end up in a situation where you can't show them your crest and you're in trouble, then simply press the button on the device I gave you. I pat the device that's in my pocket at that before nodding. Alright, I have to go back to the major battlefields now, she says with more than a little reluctance. So please stay safe. She seems to hesitate for a moment before quickly rushing in a hug and then vanishing, surprising me for a moment. Okay then. I look around for a moment before closing my eyes and listening to my surroundings, raising the sensitivity of my ears in the process. Then, after figuring out the direction that has the least humans and the most demons, I begin heading there right away. From what I can understand, the demons estimate the reality energy in the gates with a unit of measurement simply called 1 unit of energy per level of the demon wishing to pass through to the power of their class. So a level 1500 demon would take about 7.6 quadrillion units of energy, with the amount of energy use up being about the level of the demon or human to the power of their class. Meanwhile, the gates only regenerate an amount of energy depending on the number of creatures, both demon or otherwise, that die near the gate. But from what they mentioned during the strategy meeting, it sounded like it regenerates around 1 trillion units of energy a day at an incredibly rough estimate. Some days more, some less. Generally enough to let a demon lord cross the gate once every 8 or 9 decades. But only if the demon lords are the only demons crossing through that gate. And they're not. That's also not considering that the demon lords are a significant part of the ruling of Tartarus and can't be gone for all that long simply fighting, nor are they absolutely controllable by the demon king. Most won't even want to cross the gate even if they were let to do that. Then there's the fact that other demon nobles have passed through over the years as well. In fact, I'm pretty sure the only reason there are 2 dukes on Earth in the first place is because they passed through when the gate was still a fracture, after it was just formed and filled to its maximum capacity with reality energy. Overall, the Earth is screwed in this war. We have no chance outside of stalling it long enough for me to upgrade my skill and remove the curses. Otherwise Earth will end up subjugated under the demons, and I doubt Gramps would relinquish control back to the humans even if he does free them. After all, he's fought a 200-year war against us. He won't just leave after he wins. He did say that he would leave if he doesn't win though. So we just need to stall him. Meanwhile, I have to grow stronger. As strong as I can become. I clench my fist before increasing my speed and running through the snowy mountains in search of my first prey for the day. Yadera clenches his fist as the Yeti looks out over his camp at the hundreds of other Yetis move around, many of them preparing to head to bed for the night while the others take their places during watch. And he can't help but feel honored at the esteemed privilege that he, a level 731 Yeti, was given, being placed in command of an entire battalion of Yeti. Class 3 and 4 Yeti at that. Everything has been going well for the demon world recently. They managed to reclaim their lost princess, the front line was broken in the war and the stalemate along with it, and to make things even greater for Yadera, he was designated a general even without being level 1000. Even if it was because of his noble father. But Yadera doesn't see that as a downside. His need to use his father's connections. Because everyone, even Yadera, needs a chance to achieve greatness. And if he needs to rely on connections to do that, then he will. Yadera unclenches his fist, showing a smile on his face that reveals the sharp fangs on his white fur-covered face. The Yeti has, unlike the other Yetis around them, a set of glowing red patterns on the fur in his face that are unique to his ancestors' etched skill. Patterns that spread onto his tusks as well. Meanwhile, the rest of his 2.5-meter tall body is covered entirely in stark white fur as he flexes his claws a little. Also, unlike a lot of the other Yeti here, Yadera's armor consists of blood metal, making a stark contrast in color from his fur. The Yeti continues looking out over the base camp from his place on a cliff's edge, ignoring all of the snow falling down around him until he finally turns around and begins to enter his tent. But right when he's doing so, he feels a slight itch in his body, followed by a twitch in his head that both give him pause. Yadera turns around and looks at his surroundings for a moment before studying the Yetis below the cliff, only to turn around again and head back into the tent. Must have been my imagination. A few hours later. Yadera grimaces as he gets up from his bed in the tent, feeling a dull pain radiating throughout his body, along with another stabbing pain in his head. Then he walks over to the entrance and leaves the tent before shouting, again. One of the healers now currently busy healing any other demon in the area rushes over to him and uses a healing skill on him that grants him relief from the faint pain, and more importantly, the stabbing pain in his head. But they once again fail to do anything about the fogginess he feels in his mind. Just what in the Demon King's name is going on? Is some sort of major disease running through this camp? Or did the humans release a disease on us? But how is it coming back every time we heal ourselves? The Yeti's grimace grows larger as he steps up to the cliff and looks out over the base camp, finding all of the demons under his command in various degrees of sickness all over the camp. And along with that he notices all of their water, their food, their resources, and even the air around them filled with a very faint reddish-black tint to it. His eyes narrow at the sight of the mist. A mist that he didn't see until this time leaving his camp. Looks like it's a skill, and whatever it is has been building up for a while now. Since it wasn't visible when I first used magic sense to check out the camp. Search the nearby area for any humans, he shouts despite having already given that order once before. And pack up the camp. We're moving locations. The enemy will just find us again and continue their assault after moving, but we'll at least move out of the heavily contaminated area. Yadera continues using his magic sense skill to search through his surroundings for any sort of sources of mana or magic at all, but no matter how hard he tries to search within the few kilometers surrounding the base camp, he can't find anything out of the ordinary. Except for the disease in the air itself. Damn it, they have to be somewhere nearby. The Yeti grabs a potion crafted by the witches, an incredibly expensive item on Tartarus that costs thousands of gold coins, and downs it to recover his mana. Yaltal. Yadera shouts, making a female Yeti standing just a bit shorter than him approach from her post outside of his tent. Send forces outside of the base camp to search for the enemy as well. I suspect they're trying to wear us down and drain us of our mana to give them an easy time when they assault en masse. As you command, General, the woman states before rushing off to do her job. I have to prepare for an army of humans. There's no way whoever's targeting us has any less than a force of 1,000 guardians with them, and if they attack us while we're weakened like this. Yetera's grimace returns at that thought as he considers the ramifications for him if he were to lose his very first campaign on Earth. One that he was given control of simply due to his father's rank and no actual achievements on his part. If it comes down to it, I can just give out my stock of potions. His father had given them to him for a reason, but he really didn't believe he'd have to use them all this early on. Just the thought of burning dozens of potions on the campaign this early on irritates the man enough to finally rouse him from his sloth. Whoever this bastard is, I will make them pay tenfold for what they've done. They can't keep this up forever after all. Yetera immediately redoubles his efforts into searching for the enemy.